Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku and Nizu were treated less than human? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Izuku sat at his desk stiffly, waiting for the class to begin. Kaken leaned back in his chair, propping himself up to take up half of Izuku's desk. Izuku could always try to work in the space under the chair, but the risk of bumping it would be far too high. He was not in the mood to be attacked or shouted at, although he never was. He was in a good mood today, awaiting the lecture on beginner's analysis. He couldn't be called creepy for doing as he was told. Not this time. He shuddered as he fell under Uraraka's gaze from the doorway. She was running uncharacteristically late. Her bag slumped on her shoulders as she hurried across the class to sit behind Ida. Aizawa-sensei came in shortly after her, making the muddled voices finally disperse. Aizawa-sensei's bland voice calmed Izuku's nerves as he started with the announcements. "I assume you've heard the rumors about a new class." He took a deep breath and started again. "The rumors are true. Nedzu has added a new mandatory class to the Hero Course student schedules. Your classes as a result will be around 15 minutes shorter." He gave an almost direct look towards Izuku. Izuku shrunk down, trying to avoid his teacher's gaze. There is no way to become hurt in said class. Rowdy behavior also will not be tolerated. His directioned gaze swept over the class. Anyone who assumes the new class and new teacher can be treated without respect will be expelled. The movement of any and all students stopped. Izuku doubted they'd be disrespectful, except save a few members of the class. Mineta was on his last leg in Class 1A. Even Mineta acknowledged this, and Izuku knew that UA would never expel a student like Kaken. His quirk is made to be a hero. After all, Kaken almost always gets his way. Now on to the assignment today. Aizawa went on. "Today you will be an analysis piece on the staff. You will go into as much depth as possible, although this is just to gauge what needs to be discussed and taught to you." Izuku stopped listening. His smile felt uncontrollable, although his skin buzzed with excitement. He got to do something he was good at, and no one would think him weird. This class was going to be great. Izuku practically bounced in his seat as Ida gave him one of the many papers. Izuku tried not to grin anymore after Ida gave him a soft smile. "I could write a lot about Aizawa-sensei or about most of the teachers really." Izuku chewed his lip, feeding his new nervous habit. "Who will I do?" Izuku stared forward, now lost in thought, unaware he was softly muttering. "I could do a short general analysis on all of them." The idea made his lips quirk into a newfound smile as he happily started writing, completely unaware of his soft muttering. He had to grab blank sheet after blank sheet from his bag. He finished filling another sheet with his small, unusually messy handwriting, inspecting it from time to time to make sure it was legible. Unaware of the attack boiling under Katsuki's skin, he reached for his bag, already ready to fill more paper with his unkempt script, when his elbow nudged the back of Kaken's chair. He winced, knowing what was unfortunately coming. Kaken whirled around, already on his feet, surprising everyone but Izuku. He let out an explosion onto Izuku's desk, knocking the curly-haired boy backward, yelling something about the Diamond Deku. Izuku's ears rang as Kaken was stopped by Aizawa. "I shouldn't have provoked him. Bakugu, that is not hero-like behavior worthy of being in a prestigious school such as UA. Heroes do not assault their rivals for merely distracting them. You need to be kinder to your classmates, along with being more respectful of school property." It didn't matter to Izuku now. His day had been ruined, no matter how much he tried to pretend it hadn't. He'd spend the day flashing back to those painful memories of junior high and waiting for punishments that weren't coming. And it's my first FIC, and I'm sorry the first chapter was so short." Izuku laid in his room exhausted. Starting Monday he would have a new class to study for, a new teacher to buy gifts for, and learn to trust. Adults are always hardest though. He opened his group chat with Tenya and Shoto. If they were going to spend the night, he would have to change his shower routine. "I have a legus rabbit. Are you guys spending the night later?" Shoto fire snowflake. Virum virum person running dashing away, I will be there soon Izuku. I have a legus rabbit. Alrighty. Shoto fires snowflake. Please take down the All Might poster. Izuku sighed and sat up, tossing his All Might TM phone onto his pillow. He stared at the All Might TM poster, featuring All Might dressed like a cowboy. He didn't understand how Shoto found it disturbing, but he'd take it down before his boyfriends arrived. He got up, knowing he wouldn't have long to shower if he didn't start now. He picked through the laundry basket of clean clothes he had yet to put away. He pulled out an All Might First Arrow onesie and dug around for a shirt. The collar makes him itchy. Izuku went into the bathroom, making sure to lock it behind him. He carefully shifted out of his clothes. He didn't want to risk anything happening to the stitches. Recovery Girl had told him she would not, in any terms, heal his injuries. Luckily for him, he had experience with cuts and burns. He unwrapped the gauze clinging to his side. Much to his relief, the stitches seemed to be holding up fine, although he would still clean it after his shower. He turned the hot water on, grateful for the water that sprayed out. He stepped in, letting the sting of the too hot water turn his skin pink and irritated. He sighed when his wet mop of hair fell over onto his face. Izuku scrubbed his shampoo into his wreck of curls, letting the soapy hot water run down his face as he stepped back into the water. He pushed the unnecessary thoughts of the past fade away before he scrubbed at his skin. It always took too long. Rinsing the pale paste off of the rag, almost like he was shaving with it. At least it's not everywhere. He thought as he ran his hand over the rough area of skin. He finished scrubbing down and rinsed the conditioner out. He turned off the water and reached for his towel, pulling it off of the shower rod. He gently dried off his side, wincing when he pressed too hard. He attempted to towel dry his hair, sighing in defeat when he realized he needed a hairdryer. Izuku! Tenya called from the other side of the door. Izuku gently wiped the mirror before answering him. Yeah, I'm in here. He stared at the permanent hand-shaped marks on his face. Enek. I'll be out in a minute, hold on. Izuku shook off the lost feeling and dove down to look for his hairdryer. I'm putting your All Mightem poster under your bed before Shoto gets here. Izuku made a noise of agreement before plugging in his hairdryer, smiling at the various fading pro-hero stickers. He put it down after peeling off the Endeavor sticker. You don't belong there. Izuku muttered. Endeavor doesn't count to Izuku, not anymore anyway. Izuku hurriedly searched for his one-way ticket out of 40,000 questions. Finding the jar filled with cream about the same color as him was easy. Applying it before his hair was dry was not. He did manage, but it seemed to take ages. He patted his now scarless face and started the blow dryer. Tonight would be fine and nothing would go wrong. He won't let it. Shota sat on his couch, his loud husband not far away frowning at papers. Eri asleep in bed, and Hitoshi in the dorms. They were free to do their grading without distractions. Shota was grading the analysis papers the class had turned in. He went through the pages. Momo, Ida, and a few others turned in around 5 pages each, with decent analysis of their select teacher. Denki turned in 1 page, most of the margins filled with little drawings, and the analysis cut off halfway. Some of the self-proclaimed Baku squad did something similar, although Shota did not appreciate it. He followed through all the way to Mineta's analysis of Nemuri, which went way too far. Most of Mineta's analysis had been on her appearance, and specifically certain attributes. He frowned. This had to be grounds for expulsion. It had to be. Nedza couldn't deny him this time. Sho, why are you looking at the paper like that? Hizashi had his red pen in hand, looking at him with an expression that was full of concern. I'm going to expel Mineta. Hizashi reached for the paper in his hands, and Shota let him have it, preferring not to look at the descriptive writing on her appearance. His husband muttered as he read it and then stopped. Ooh, that's nasty. He grimaced at the paper, folding it, and attempting to get Shota to take it back. Exactly. He pushed Hizashi's hand holding the disgusting report away. Shota went back to grading as Hizashi folded the paper, putting it on the coffee table they were using as a desk. It was silent beside the sound of pen on paper. Shota finished grading Bakugu's 4-page analysis on All Might, and he frowned. He had a good size of the stack left, The papers only held together by the efforts of a struggling staple. Midoriya's name was posted on the top, labeled General Analysis of Our Staff. Shota flipped through the overflowing pages, acutely aware of how each page was labeled. Each sector for each member of the staff was organized and labeled as such on its own page. The problem wasn't the amount, no. It was the sheer truth behind the words. He even knew Hisashi was his husband, and they were beyond secretive with that information. The amount of information he considered general was astounding. He had listed different ideas and hypotheses at the end of each staff member's sections. Some of them were tips and tricks to help them in battle. Shota had never thought about tying his hair back. At least not to the depth Midoriya described. Shota didn't notice when Hisashi leaned over his shoulder and started to read along. I thought Midoriya would ace this, but I didn't think he'd do this. Hisashi muttered from Shota's side, leaning against him. Shota cleared his throat, tossing the papers aside onto the makeshift desk. I think he considers too many things, General. Izuku nearly bounced with anxiety on his way back to class. Shoto shot him a weird look before starting up a conversation. Did you hear anything about the new teacher Izuku? Shoto nudged him out of his head as they walked back. Izuku shook his head. He didn't even know what kind of class it would be. Aizawa-sensei said that it would be nearly impossible to get hurt in the class, so I doubt it's going to be anything with physical work involved. Although that could have been a threat to any of us who managed to get hurt. Izuku's anxieties had been temporarily pushed away. Also, he could attempt to analyze what his teacher had said. I think it's going to be Nedzu or someone else, maybe even Vlad. Uraraka chimed in from somewhere in front of them. Principal Nedzu is a very busy man, who does his best to keep UA the school that it is rumored to be. I doubt he would have much time to teach classes along with his other responsibilities. Tenya lectured them while they wandered down the large hallway. Izuku didn't voice his opinion on the idea. His friend deserved to keep their hypothesis as much as he did. He's not a man though. Shoto chimed in. Todoroki, it's a saying. Uraraka giggled as they walked past another group of lagging teens. Shoto muttered something under his breath. Tenya readjusted his glasses, finding a way to squeeze between Uraraka and Izuku. Where do you guys think my Neta went? Azui asked, letting out a soft rib-biting noise. Maybe he finally got expelled? Momo suggested from somewhere behind them. I hope so, Uraraka muttered. That would be long overdue. They came to the overwhelmingly large door of Class 1A that managed to look intimidating no matter how many times you've seen it. The group of chattering students made their way into the classroom and broke apart, heading their separate ways. Please take your seats as the next class is about to begin, Tenya announced, chopping the air with his arms. Class 1A was not accustomed to their teachers being early, sometimes not even on time. That's to say they were surprised when an unfamiliar person came waltzing into their class. They didn't look like a teacher or a pro for that matter. At least not in the way Aizawa did. Aizawa's scruffy homeless look was mostly caused by his jelly-based diet and his late work hours, while this man was on the complete opposite spectrum of unassuming. A baggy navy sweater was tucked loosely into cuffed blue jeans, with a tiny backpack hanging off of him. A pink mop of wavy hair fell down to his chin. A hush fell over the class as the man walked over to the podium. He fell short on the podium, having it rise nearly to his upper chest. He cleared his throat, giving the class an awkward smile before speaking. Hello there. Izuku blinked. He didn't sound very confident, although he couldn't blame him, especially if Aizawa-sensei got to him first. He popped his lips and looked across the room. Okay then, I guess we'll skip to questions then. He stood there for a minute before sighing. Do any of you have any questions for me? A few tentative hands went up, including Izuku's. Okay, then Miss Ponytail, what's your question? It's actually Momo Yaoyorozu. Could you explain to us what this class is exactly? Or who you are for that matter? Okay then Momo Yaoyorozu, I am Miki Goya, although you can call me Goya. Izuku thought the man's voice was familiar, maybe from the news or from some interview. In this class you are all going to learn about socially constructed biases and constrictions placed on heroes, or civilians in general. Does that answer your question, Momo? Momo gave an affirmative nod and Goya asked if there were more questions. A majority of the hands went down. Some of the students seemed satisfied with the answer, while a couple looked disappointed or dreadful. Izuku lowered his hand to where it could rest on the table, fully content to let others go first. Okay, Red Shoes, what's your question? Izuku pressed his hand against his chest, slightly surprised when the teacher nodded. IIW wanted TTTDK and no II if YUWWWW were a H hero. Yeah. Actually, that's what today's main assignment is. Research and reforming that information into a reasonable profile, with the added trouble of sorting through external bias. Izuku listened as well as he could, trying to ignore the teacher's gaze that lingered far too long for comfort. Stop it, Izuku. This is UA for Pete's sake. They wouldn't hire anyone like that. Mickey walked down the halls of UA, phone in hand, hazardously typing notes into his phone, such as names and possible theories, or basic things he noticed. He shuffled past the cafeteria, knowing he needed to head south to the teacher's lounge. If he was lucky, he would find a certain class teacher. Mickey pushed open the lounge's door, smiling when he spotted the black Clayton teacher sitting hunched over classwork. He slid into a plastic-wrapped chair and typed an entry into my notes. Eraserhead. The man barely gave Mickey a glance of acknowledgement before looking back at his papers. I wanted to ask you about one of your students. Eraserhead let out a muffled groan before looking at him. Which one? Midoriya, or the one with green hair? Mickey checked his notes. Yes, Midoriya. How did he defeat all of those robots on the entrance exam with no quirk? Eraserhead blinked. He has a quirk. Oh. Mickey frowned. That's strange. I mean, with those shoes I thought he would be. Eraserhead let out another grumbled sigh. What's wrong with his shoes? Well, Mickey sighed. Quirkless people need a special type of shoe, mostly because of their extra pinky joint, but there's really only one brand that makes them. So, when I saw Midoriya wearing them, and acting like that, I assumed. Mickey tapped his fingers across the table, watching the gears turn behind Eraserhead's tired eyes. Eraserhead let out a tired sigh, putting his head into his hands. If I say I'll look into it, will you leave me alone? Mickey almost felt his shoulders slump. Was he really going to ignore the possible abuse his own student went through? Sure. I gotta get going anyway. Mickey pushed himself angrily away from the table, unaware of the request Eraserhead would be sending to Netsu in mere minutes. As much as Shota would like to admit it, that new teacher's words really got under his skin. So he had done research, especially on products made for quirkless children. He was right. The shoes Midoriya wears are made specifically for quirkless children. Which is why he was in the basement of UA, heading toward the only file room they have. He stopped waiting for Nemuri to catch up before she got lost. So, why are we down here again? She asked, her heels clacked against the ground. You're the one who wanted to come with me. Shota muttered, shuffling along. I know, but I still want to know what we're doing. She tucked a purple strand behind her hair. We're down here because I made an assumption about Midoriya that may be incorrect. He grumbled, taking a sharp left to leaving Nemuri scuttering after him. Such as... Shota didn't respond, instead stopping in front of the gigantic vault door. It held hundreds of student files, all protected against quirks and thieves. Shota, what did you assume? She watched him remove his ring before opening the vault door. I'll tell you later. You're not going to tell me, at least not if you were wrong. Maybe not. He took in the massive room, filled to the brim with files on every student to ever walk UA's halls. Should we look under M? Nemuri called. She had managed to cross the room quickly, even though her heels were almost as long as Shota's hand. Yeah, Shota shuffled over to her, shifting through the drawers. What's his given name start with? She asked, digging through the beginnings of M. He watched her pull out the surprisingly thick file. She left the drawer open and clacked her way over to an almost out-of-sight table. Let's look this over, she said, sitting down on another plastic UA chair. Shota hastily sat down next to her. The first page was simply an overview of Midoriya. Birth date, July 15th. Male. Height, 5 feet 5 inches. Quirk, superpower. Quirk manifestation. Shota's brow furrowed. Midoriya received his quirk on the day of the entrance exam? That would mean he had only 2 weeks to play around and train with it. He wasn't someone who figured since it was powerful it didn't need training. He had had it for only 2 weeks, while everyone else had theirs for at least 10 years. His was fresh and unpredictable, like a child's. Shota sighed. He would need to find his problem child a quirk therapist. Even with his rapid improvement, he still would need help to prevent himself from falling any further behind. Nemuri cut off his thought process by turning the page, bringing on the recommendation section of the file. The next page held a recommendation from All Might, one with absolutely no black marks or buts. Only good words from the #1 hero in Japan. All Might knew Midoriya before he got his quirk, and from the looks of it they were close. Tashinori eats lunch with young Midoriya from time to time. Nemuri added, a small frown on her face. Shota swears that if their relationship is anything but platonic, he's going to remove Tashinori Yagi from the Earth's population. Pro-heroes that use their leverage and fame with children deserve terrible punishments. Let's just keep reading. He nodded and watched as Nemuri flipped to the teacher review. Shota blinked, frowning softly at the words that spilled across the pages. Midoriya never behaved like this at school. At least not at UA. The pages were filled with terrible words splattered against Midoriya's name. His past teachers called him attention-seeking, violent, lying, and terribly disrespectful of school property and staff. Even using slurs against other students, and going so far as to stalk them for information on their quirks. It was all labeled under villain-like behavior. Is he like this in your class? Shota asked, glancing at Nemuri. Nemuri shook her head. Never, he's kinda the opposite. Under a different teacher's name, they had written a note about Izuku's bribery, and how he was given the grades he earned. His grades were atrocious compared to his almost all a report card. When the next page was filled with examples of his bribery, Nemuri gasped. He's the one who's been leaving me sweets? Shota frowned. Had Izuku been the one bringing him coffee? I thought I had a secret admirer. She stared at Shota, making him look up. I think he's the one who brings me coffee, he said, frowning back down at the sheets of paper. What do you think of this, Nemuri? She sighed, and ran her fingers through her hair. It's troubling to say the least, Shota, she clicked her teeth. Without that note from Tashinori, he would never have gotten considered, and they describe him, he's like a completely different person, and to be honest, all of those traits they sound a lot more like Dash. She stopped talking, a deep frown laced her face. Bakugu. She nodded, a somewhat solemn look on her face. Let's look at his file, while we're down here. Shoyuta nodded, as they got up to find Bakugu's file. The file was thin, and completely markless, no negative words said about him. He was described as a kind, helpful, and perceptive child, who would grow to be a great hero. It's completely blank. Nemuri murmured, before tossing it onto the table. It's almost like they didn't want Midoriya to get into UA. She put her head in her hands and let out an angry sound. I don't see how an entire school staff could lie about a kid like that. People treat quirkless people like scum. I think it could be a simple case of quirk discrimination. Shota sighed. He would have to request a meeting with Nedzu, so he could schedule a meeting with Aldera Junior High's principal and Aldera Elementary's. I'll see about talking to the middle school principal Dash. I'll talk to the elementary schools. Shota blinked. He wasn't expecting Nemuri to volunteer, nor did he plan on asking her. Then we can have Hizashi talk to Tashinori too, that way we can finish this investigation faster. Nemuri Dash. Don't Nemuri me, I'm helping with this case so we can get another possibly bad school district down before it can injure more kids. Shota sighed, knowing his friend wouldn't listen to his argument, and that he would appreciate the help. Shota sat outside of the middle school, sending a quick reply before sliding out. He shut the car door, and slunk up the stairs to the school. The school had one of those old push-button camera doorbells, which he begrudgingly pressed. He heard a loud buzz, and one of the doors clicked open. An empty hallway waited for him on the other side of the large wooden doors. He stopped in front of a giant picture board, full of upperclassmen who had graduated, including Midoriya. The first thing Shota saw was the illegal quirk use. Even Bakugu, one of his own students, had deemed it fit to pop sparks in his hands. The second thing was the cowering Midoriya, crouched on the other side of the teacher, with an awfully bruised face. He took out his phone and snapped a picture, before sending it directly to Nezu. He turned and walked down the granite hallway, coming across a large desk tucked against the back wall, with room to walk around to the desk to the rooms hidden quaintly behind it. A lady sat behind the desk playing with her faded blue hair. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked in a squeaky voice. "Yes, I'm here for a meeting with the principal. Principal Ito is with a student right now, but I'm sure he will be done soon." She gave him a tight-lipped smile and started to type again. Shota sighed and sat down on one of the benches. It was painted an ugly bright orange, but from the bench he could see a poster board labeled, "Our Future Hero," in big bright orange bubble letters. The only person on the poster board was a young Bakugu, once again violating the law for a picture. He zoomed in with his camera and took a quick picture, sending it once again to Nezu. The girl pretending to work noticed and warned him to not take pictures. "What time is your meeting?" 2:25. Shota said, actively sending the picture to Hizashi and Namuri. "All right, you can go in." She seemed beyond bored sitting at the desk. Although she had said a teacher was with a student, he could suddenly go in? What about the dash? "There is no student, just go in." She motioned for the door on her left, and Shota quietly edged past her, putting his phone into his front pocket. He opened the solid wooden door. The office was small with an older-era computer on the bronze-toed desk. It left scar marks in the 70s themed carpet. Behind the desk was an older man, maybe in his 60s, with a gigantic bald spot. Something wolfish appeared in his gray eyes when he grinned at Shota. "You must be the man from Ue?" he said, his nasal voice making the words sound off. Shota nodded anyway. "Aizawa. Ito, and may I ask why dash? Can I record this conversation?" Shota seemed to take him off guard. Well, yes, I suppose so," he smiled at Shota. Shota did not return the favor. He clicked the recording device hidden in his scarf. "I am here to talk to you about Bakugu Dash." Yes, Bakugu is a fine young man. Very prosperous student. Always kind and helpful when someone needed something, especially Midoriya. Poor Bakugu tried his best to get that miscreant under control, but I guess you can't tame the disabled. Shota Aizawa did not like this man at all. We were all worried for him, but he denied any help from the teachers. Bakugu even tutored the child. He tutored everyone really, a kind, polite child, the kind to include everyone, and I mean everyone dash. Shota knew he wasn't about to stop talking about the precious Bakugu, so he interrupted. "And Midoriya? Oh, or excuse me?" He looked generally confused on what Shota was asking. "What about Midoriya?" "Well, he started off slow like he knew to be careful. He was diagnosed quirkless, which led me to be quite surprised when he was shown with one in the sports festival." Shota kept staring at him, hoping he would continue. "I was surprised he hadn't been expelled from such a prestigious school as UA." "Why is that?" Shota was egging him on, knowing he was just digging a hole. "Well, he had a terrible work ethic, terrible attitude. He always picked fights, provoked other students, and was a general monster, and always lying." Shota didn't like where this was going. Principal Ito laughed like it was a silly game. "He once told me a terrible lie, that his English teacher had touched him." Shota felt a pit settle deep into his stomach. Had he said what he thought he did? I of course knew he was lying. I had known him for years, and the man is married. To a woman nonetheless. So I made him call the teacher on the school phone, and ask him, which he promptly told me was a lie, and boy did he get a caning that day dash. "Shut your mouth. Shut it right now." Shota stood using his height against the man. "You just admitted to ignoring a child's allegations of SXL assault, making them talk to that trash afterward, and hitting them. That boy is a liar." The man in the desk chair felt the need to raise his voice at Shota, which was the wrong thing to do. Shota grit his teeth, turned off the recording, turned on his heel, and left. He had no other choice. Besides decking him, he wasn't going to waste any more time on that trash. He had to get Nezu ready for an emergency meeting. Aldera was going down whether or not they wanted to. Nemuri shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The chair was too close to the ground, leaving her hunched on the plastic chair. The woman seated across the desk from her was clearly enjoying the extreme height difference. The principal cleared her throat before speaking. May I ask what a teacher from a prestigious school, such as your own, is doing at my little elementary? Nemuri nodded. I am here to discuss some peculiar things I've noticed from some of our students. I assume you are talking about Bakugo Katsuki and Midoriya Izuku? Nemuri nodded, and the principal continued. Well, both of the children showed potential when they arrived at my school, although I am very proud of both of them, though one of them made little to no effort to keep to our standards. Bakugo. Nemuri thought, nodding along with the lady. Midoriya just couldn't seem to adjust to school life. Nemuri frowned. His only friend was Bakugo, and that didn't last very long. Bakugo was adamant to make friends with other children. Izuku only seemed to try to suffocate him. The principal went silent, and then gave Nemuri a tight-lipped smile. What exactly did you mean, peculiar things? Midoriya shows some concerning behaviors and Bakugo is aggressive over little dash. Bakugo is just competitive and goal-motivated. He had been since he came to this school, and we here strive to fan the flames of passion in our students' dash. Yes, but Midoriya is showing worrying signs, especially for a formerly quirkless child. At UA we are determined to grow our students into well-adjusted adults, and Midoriya can't even look anyone in the eyes dash. He still does that? The principal stared at her dumbfounded. Yes, he seems to have a problem with social anxiety dash. I thought I got him to stop. The principal muttered, crossing her arms over her chest. Nemuri frowned. How did you go about that? Well, I made him meet my eyes. I wouldn't want people to think he was lying. Nemuri felt her lips flatten against each other. That didn't sound like something to do to a child. Oh really? Nemuri said, trying not to fiddle with the recorder pinned to the bottom of her skirt. Yes, I made sure Midoriya met my eyes. It's one of the best ways to break a bad habit such as that. Nemuri stared at this lady who she decidedly wanted to arrest. She talked about laying hands on a child like it was some brilliant thing she discovered possible. How often did Midoriya come into your office? Nemuri asked coolly. What? How often did Midoriya come to your office? Nemuri stared her down from the tiny plastic chair, ignoring the bubbling anger in her stomach. Well, nearly daily. The poor kid couldn't stay out of trouble dash. That will be all then, expect a call from my boss. Nemuri stood, surprising the woman behind the chair, and strode out of the office, to vent to Shota and Hisashi later. For now, she needed to see Nezu, and wave it into Hisashi's face that they weren't miles off. In an upper-class part of town, a young blonde man is bringing an older blonde man to confess the truth to his and a child's relationship. Izuku Midoriya happily waited outside of his apartment, waiting for his mother to open the door. The wooden door swung open with an abundance of energy. Izuku! His mother wrapped his arms around him, bringing a smile to his face when she tried to lift him up. Ooh, you're heavy. She grinned at him, letting go. Good to see you've been eating good. I missed you so much, honey, even with the video calls. There's nothing like holding your baby. This time when she wrapped her arms around him, she succeeded in lifting him. Mom! She kept him inches off of the ground, managing to pack him inside of the house. Let's go sit on the couch, baby. She giggled, carrying the smiling Izuku halfway to the couch. Oh, Izuku, take your shoes off. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to carry them to the door dash. It's fine. He slid the shoes off, leaving the red high tops tied. He shuffled over and sat them by the front door. Izuku, come back. I bought a new movie. She was digging through their movie drawer, waving Izuku back over. It's a bad movie, so we can talk over it. Izuku smiled and sat down on the couch. Inko sat down next to him, remote in hand. She was silent for less than a minute. Did you confess? Yeah, I did. Izuku smiled. What did they say? Inko egged him on, leaning forward in excitement. They said yes dash. Izuku, that's amazing, honey. Do they make you happy? Are you guys happy? Have you gone on a first date? Can I meet them dash? Izuku now realized that the rest of the night would be talking about his newly found life. The worst part is how excited he was to talk with his mom about something happy, school, relationships, friends. It was all going well. It was finally time to spread happy news to his mother. Then we can go joyriding. He wouldn't have it any other way. Izuku sat leaned over a dormitory table, chewing at his cereal. It tasted like cardboard in his mouth. Each pass of the cold spoon made his chewed lips ache. He glanced around the poorly lit space. Still alone. He muttered, pawing at his tired red eyes. He liked his lips, deciding he should wash his bowl before maybe working on his analysis notebook. No one could throw it out the window if no one was awake. He stood at the sink, hot water burning at his hands as he scrubbed the ceramic bowl. He turned off the water, drying off the bowl and spoon, and putting them back into their respective places. He shuffled back out into the main room. Still alone. He sighed, plopping down onto the stool to study. The click of the dorm building's door made Izuku look up. The skinny form of his mentor stood across the room from him, blue eyes drooping sadly. Young Midoriya? His mentor steadily walked over to him. I'm glad to see I don't need to wake you for this. Izuku blinked as the blonde put his hand on his shoulder. All Might? What do you mean dash? Izuku was interrupted as All Might pulled him to his feet. Some of your teachers would like to speak to you. All Might slid his hand down to Izuku's shoulder blades and pushed him further into the early morning darkness. Izuku's mind raced. Why would his teachers need to see him before class? Why would they send All Might to get him? A small feeling of dread pooled in Izuku's stomach. They were expelling him, weren't they? They had decided that he showed no more potential and his quirk control wasn't good enough, so they were going to send him home to his mother, to make the both of them cry. Then his mother would hate him as well because he failed, and All Might would ask for his quirk back. Young Midoriya, there's no need to be afraid, you aren't in any trouble. He ran a supposed-to-be soothing hand onto Izuku's other shoulder. Izuku didn't find it very comforting. Thoughts of what-ifs and other fears crawled up his neck. What if they knew about One for All? What if that's why he was being kicked out? Because he had to use someone else's quirk to get by? Because he was quirkless and he stole a quirk? Poor defenseless Izuku. What are you gonna do about it? No one's gonna stop me from giving the scum of the earth a treat. You couldn't stop me if you wanted to. You were a mistake, just ask your mom. Take a swan dive off of the roof. Izuku stops walking. All Might tried to press forward for a second, but Izuku is rooted in his spot on the cement. Izuku tries to ignore the burning feeling in his eyes, or the lump swelling in his throat. He needed to ask before they got there, or he wouldn't be prepared. Are they going to expel me? Toshinori was angry when he heard the recordings. Most of the people in the room were. Toshinori felt personally attacked, that someone had thought it was justifiable to hurt his mentee. But it had also stung when Toshinori listened to the recordings of those conversations, because it dawned on him the boy he considered his son did not trust him. He hadn't even told him about the physical or emotional problems that he faced because of his quirklessness. He was the #1 hero. People everywhere trusted him, except for possibly Izuku Midoriya, his own mentee. He was tasked with fetching him because he was the closest to Midoriya. But was he really? Sure, he mentored him for over a month, but he didn't even notice anything wrong with his behavior. He assumed he was just an anxious teen. He was the retired symbol of peace, but he didn't see anything wrong with his fidgety, self-sacrificing, 14-year-old mentee. He wasn't even aware of how the quirkless populace was treated these days, and he used to be one of them. He left an abused teenager on a roof after crushing his dreams. What kind of mentor, symbol of peace person had he been? Having a hand on Midoriya helps. It feels nice to know he's safe and within arm's reach. He silently swears to protect Midoriya from anyone who wishes him harm. Midoriya was going to be a great hero one day, and Toshinori would make sure of it. Midoriya stops walking, and so does Toshi. He glances at Midoriya. His eyes are almost full of tears. Something in Toshinori's chest cracks. What's wrong? He didn't get to finish. Are they going to expel me? Midoriya's tearful, frightened voice made something else crack. Midoriya Because I can do better, I can train more, I'll even stop going out, I'll only visit my mom on Sunday Midoriya. I'll sear up my side, I'll give you back One for All. Please, All I want to do is help people dash. Toshinori felt his heart fall into his stomach at his crying mentee's face. Young Midoriya, no one is getting expelled. He put a firm two-hand grip onto the small boy's shoulders. You shouldn't even consider giving up time with your family, even to be a hero. Midoriya nodded, now content with keeping his eyes on the floor. Midoriya sniffled and scrubbed at his eyes. Toshi sighed. Would you like a hug, young Midoriya? Midoriya wrapped himself achingly tight around the taller man's middle. He buried his face into his overlarged shirt. Toshinori squeezed him back, laying his head against the curls that invaded his neck space. When Midoriya let go, Toshinori started speaking again. Now, young Midoriya, what did you say about your side? Midoriya locked his eyes back on the ground. And nothing, All Might. Toshinori frowned. Let me see. Midoriya looked up at his mentor with a confused expression. But it's and nothing dash. If it was nothing you wouldn't have mentioned it. Now let me see it. Midoriya shifted uncomfortably before shifting his shirt so his mentor could see it. Toshinori crouched down slightly to peer at the exposed skin in the dawning daylight. On the exposed flesh was a deep-looking wound caked in blood. Fresh black stitches kept the skin from peeling away from itself, exposing more internal issues. Young Midoriya, this looks terrible. He looked at the bruising skin that blasted out to cover most of his side. Where did you get this? Midoriya shifted his eyes further away from All Might. Kaken was in a bad mood and an eye made him mad. All Might frowned. When did young Bakugo dash? Thursday, last WW week. Toshinori inspected the wound again. You didn't go to Recovery Girl? Midoriya shook his head softly. She said as she wouldn't heal my injuries anymore. Toshinori's frown deepened. Don't worry though. I know how to deal with injuries, I have. Experience dash, that didn't help Toshinori's frown. You stitched this when? He asked, taking a closer look at the dark threads. WLT the F first T time, W is T the D-day O of. B but, I it kept P popping OU out. S so, I H had TT to K keep RE stitching I it. Did you clean it out? Why yes. I it P pop T this morning, I W is G going T to clean I it, B but why you came and G got me. Toshinori nodded and dropped his shirt, rising back up to his full height. I'll have a chat with young Bakugo and Recovery Girl, but for now be careful with it until we get there, and after the teachers are done with you, I'll make her take care of it. Midoriya nodded, once again looking on the ground. Toshinori snaked an arm around Midoriya's shoulders. Let's go, kiddo. Izuku tried not to tremble next to his mentor as he looked around the room full of familiar staff. All Might wrapped an arm around Izuku without warning, making him flinch. Izuku tried to play it off as if he didn't, but the blonde's grip loosened. He locked his eyes onto the floor. If he didn't make eye contact with them, then they might just forget he was there. He frowned when the eyes of his teachers didn't fade. All Might had told him that he wasn't being expelled, or even in any trouble, so why did he feel like he was? Hello, Midoriya. The principal almost chirped at him from behind his desk, a cup of tea in his paws. Would you like a cup of tea? It wasn't much of a question. Izuku had a cup of bitter tea in his hands before he could blink. Tea, thank you, sir. Izuku took a sip of the bitter hot liquid. It made him recoil, although he tried not to show it on the outside. Now, Midoriya, we've brought you up here to ask you a few questions. Midoriya nodded, still looking towards the floor with a newfound determination. To start, I would like to ask about your middle school. You went to Aldera Junior High, correct? Izuku made a small sound of agreement, not liking where this was going. Would you say you were treated fairly while enrolled in the Aldrin school system? Izuku knows what they want to hear. Yes, I would. Izuku muttered, receiving an almost frown from the principal. The world wasn't fair. You get what you get, and you don't throw a fit. Especially not if you're quirkless. I would care to disagree. The stoat took a long sip from his cup as Izuku decided to take a deeper interest in the floor. In fact, I may go as far to say they treated you cruelly. Izuku took another sip of the steaming liquid. Pretending that was why his eyes burned was easier. Would you like to inform us on why you believe you were being treated justly? Izuku understood. They wanted him to admit to being quirkless. probably so they could laugh at him. I was quirkless, he muttered. All Might squeezed his shoulders. Do you assume that quirkless students don't deserve the same treatment as everyone else? Izuku felt a pit land in his stomach. No sir, I don't. Then what makes you believe you were treated fairly? How was Izuku supposed to answer that? He wasn't treated fairly, but that doesn't mean he didn't deserve it. He deserved it not for being quirkless, but for failing to be a true hero, even without a quirk, for being too weak to stand up for himself. Midoriya, you have to answer him. His homeroom teacher caught his attention from across the room, standing next to his secret husband. Izuku decided to pass the question. Why is tea this I'm important again? He asked, taking a long sip of the cooling tea. UA is opening a case against the Aldrin school system, and we would like your consent to push forward, seeing as you're our first victim. Victim? He wasn't a victim. He was a hero, he was going to be one, he didn't need defending, especially not by his school dash. We can of course push past you and take your mother's consent, and once we got hold of the security footage from your years in their schools, we can take them to court. His mother's? Does that mean she'd know all of the things he hid from her? That wouldn't work out, no not at all, she'd be so sad. He was such a terrible son. What if his teachers found out about him? He would be in trouble, wouldn't he? They'd think he was nasty like Kaken did. What would All Might think? Would he want one for all back so someone like Izuku never had it? All Might would certainly not want someone like him to have such a powerful quirk, not after what he let happen. Okay. He almost whimpered and he regretted opening his mouth. You should probably send a more popular pro l like present mic, I if you want him to hand it over. Thank you for the advice, Midoriya. I will take it into consideration when we go to receive the footage. Conversation flared about how they were going to do, until All Might cleared his throat. Can any of you take young Midoriya to Recovery Girl? I have someone else to attend to. All Might stood and took Izuku up to his feet. Come on, problem child. His homeroom teacher waved him out the door, and his mentor pushed him forward. Aizawa-sensei, Yamada-sensei and Izuku walked down the hallway in silence. Why do you need Recovery Girl, little listener? Izuku glanced at his teachers. All Might wanted me to get my stitches checked out. Aizawa stopped walking. What stitches? Yamada turned around and walked back to them. Yeah, what stitches, little listeners? Izuku shyly stared at the floor. He turned and pulled up his shirt so he could see the thick stitches he had done this morning. Yamada-sensei let out a hiss as he crouched down to get a better look. When did she give you stitches? His homeroom teacher took a good look at it from far away. She didn't. Did you do those yourself? Yes. You can get gangrene from that, problem child. Izuku looked at the floor again. When did you need stitches, little listener? Izuku muttered the same response he gave All Might. He might have purposely left out the part about Kaken, but otherwise he was being truthful. Why didn't you go to the licensed nurse that was on campus? Aizawa-sensei frowned down at him, even when they started to walk again. She said N not T to C come B back H hurt, B because she W wasn't G going to heal me anymore. Aizawa's frown deepened. Let's get you to Recovery Girl then. Chio sat in her private office, reading a medical file for a student. She needed to order more EpiPens for them. It would be terrible if someone dies because of their peanut allergy. She glanced up when someone opened her office. Sit down on a bed and I'll be with you shortly, she called, clicking to the next page. Aizawa stepped into her view and made her look up. I said I would be out shortly. He got nearly on top of her desk before hissing at her. Did you tell Midoriya you wouldn't heal his injuries anymore? He had a look of disbelief on his face, one that she would not associate with the usually plain man. Yes, she answered, closing the file. Why would you do that? So, he would learn not to expect to be instantly back out and fighting again. He needs to be careful out in the world, because if he gets hurt I won't be there to patch him up. Aizawa blinked at her in annoyance. So you left him to his own devices? Aizawa crossed his arms, annoyance lying on his features. It's not as if I wouldn't treat him. Aizawa, I am refuting him access to my healing abilities. Not telling him to stitch himself up dash. It's funny that you say that because that's exactly how he took it. He hid an injury from me since last Thursday that required stitches. Chio felt her stomach drop. Because when you said you wouldn't heal him, he assumed he was back to treating himself. Chio pushed herself away from her desk. Is he all right? Chio grabbed her cane and hurriedly tried to shuffle out of her office. He's all right for now, but you know how terribly that could have gone. Chio made it out into her medbay, where Midoriya was sitting on the edge of one of her beds. Yamada listened to music in the corner. Midoriya let me see it. She watched him lift his shirt, revealing thick black stitches, caked in dried blood, and surrounded by a humongous bruise. She let out air through her teeth, relieved it wasn't infected. Who stitched it? Me. Midoriya's voice came out small. I it pop tea this morning so I stitched I it be back up. But I didn't see clean I it out why yet. Chio nodded. Midoriya, when I said I wouldn't heal your injuries anymore, I didn't mean I wouldn't treat them. Just assumed. How did you even get hurt? Midoriya looked down at the floor and muttered something. Dearie, I'm older, you're going to have to speak up. Midoriya was quiet for a second. I am made kak and am mad. Recovery girl frowned. Let's get you fixed up and then you can head to class. Midoriya nodded, unaware that she wasn't filled in on the investigation that was underway. Or that she would soon be all too aware. Toshinori knocked on the blonde boy's door, ignoring the slight anger that rose in his chest. He would simply ask young Bakugo why he had assaulted young Midoriya, then he would dish out his grounding, and keep a calm face as he walks out. The door flung open to reveal an annoyed uniformed Bakugo. Do you want? He leaned across the doorway blocking any look inside. Young Bakugo, I need to speak with you. The red-eyed boy clicked his tongue before ducking back into his dorm room. Toshinori followed him in, sitting down on his desk chair. Bakugo laid across his bed, slouching against the wall. Spit it out. Toshinori bit the inside of his mouth, trying not to let his eye twitch show. I'm here to figure out why you thought it would be appropriate to assault young Midoriya? Bakugo ticked his teeth. Have you met him? Demon nerd doesn't know when to shut his FNG mouth. An ugly smile crept across his face, making it look wrong. Toshinori's frown dipped so low he thought it would fall off his face. He needed Stitch's dash. So? Demon nerd deserved it for being so weak. Toshinori wanted to hit a student. He knew it would get him condemned, but it would feel so satisfying. That's not very hero-like young dash, Bakugo cut him off, seemingly thinking being the loudest made him correct. If Deku wants to fight then we can fight dash, Bakugo pushed himself up off of the bed. Just because someone angers you young Bakugo does not mean you should hurt them. Toshinori's serious tone didn't seem to affect the teen in the least. It was such an opposite from Midoriya's nervous and fearful energy. It made him sad. Why the F are you sticking up for that whore dash? Toshinori cut him off before he hit him. Young Bakugo, you're grounded for the foreseeable future. No free time, no friends, just the kitchen and classes. No leaving UA grounds either. If you lay a single breath on Midoriya, I will hear about it, and you will be suspended. Toshinori didn't give the red-eyed teen a chance to speak before sliding out of the dorm room and heading back to his own place, where he would silently beat his pillow, because Toshinori did not believe in hitting children. Hisashi tapped his fingers, music blaring from his radio as his husband pretended not to enjoy it. They were heading to the Midoriya's residence, hoping to have a word with his mother about the oncoming investigation into the Aldrin school system. Netsu had advised them to talk to Midoriya's mother before continuing, in hopes that she would want the investigation to be held in the name of her child, or better yet enthusiastically participate in the burning of Aldera and its discriminatory principles. You missed the turn. His husband muttered from the passenger's seat. No, I didn't show, quit being a backseat driver. Hisashi definitely missed the turn. He just won't admit it. Yes, you did. That's why the phone keeps saying to take a U-turn. Hisashi sighed. I know a shortcut, show I went to school here. The dark-haired man sighed. So, did I? Hisashi, you're just being difficult because you didn't see the turn. Hisashi pouted. Okay, I missed a turn, but at least I'm not being a know-it-all. Hisashi pulled into the apartment lot. How did we dash? Don't question it, Sho. I told you I knew a shortcut. Shota pulled off his seatbelt before climbing out of the small car. We need to pick Eri up from Nemuri's place when we get back. Shota shambled along next to Hisashi, matching his husband's long stride. Yeah, Eri seems to be having a hell of a time hanging out with her. They're close, Hisashi. That's what happens when Nemuri brings out brownies. Hisashi sighed. He would have to remember that. Did the little listener seem awfully quiet today to you, Sho? His husband nodded as they came to the door of Midoriya's apartment. Hisashi raised his hand to knock, surprised when it opened seconds later. A small woman stood in the doorway, half of her green hair tied into a bun, while the rest hung down. Her soft features and wide eyes clearly shared with her son. She let worry frost her features at the sight of the two pro-heroes. Did something happen? Her features twisted into the same worried look Midoriya had this morning. No, nothing happened to your son. We would just like to ask you a few questions. Mrs. Midoriya let them into the house and politely waited for them to take off their shoes. She sat them at the kitchen table. Do either of you need anything? Tea, water, maybe something to eat? Hisashi shook his head. No thank you, Mrs. Midoriya. He looked around the homey kitchen, smiling at the picture of her son on the wall. She sat down, flattening her skirt against her knees. What were your questions? Is it true your son was quirkless until the day of the entrance exam? His husband's plain voice didn't match with the feeling in the room. Yes, it was quite the miracle. The doctors said it would never happen, especially when they discovered his double pinky joint. Hisashi felt a frown tug at his face. Wouldn't those clues lead to mean he was quirkless? So I assume he faced the same problem as many quirkless students? She nodded, a sad expression crossed her face. Bullying. She went quiet for a minute. Izuku would come home with bruises, and sometimes even cuts, but the school refused to do anything about it. I tried to file a report, but they told me it would go nowhere. She took a sip of her water. Izuku used to beg me not to send him. I tried my best to keep him home, but when they said he had to go, I had to send him. She stared into her water cup. We're starting an investigation into the school system on behalf of your son, Hisashi said. Mrs. Midoriya pulled her fingers. We have reason to believe the Aldrin school system is guilty of allowing physical, emotional, and SXL abuse to continue. Mrs. Midoriya froze. SXL? She asked from behind her fingers. Shota nodded. Yes, the principal of the junior high admitted he was told about it by Midoriya. Hisashi watched as a silent rage seemingly slid onto Midoriya Inko's face. She took a deep breath. When you find out who laid hands on my son, can you tell me? I would like to have a chat with them before they get put away. Her malice-filled voice made Hisashi feel cold in his leather. Of course, he is your son. Inko sat at her kitchen table, head in her hands. She had turned the lights off after her son's teachers had left. She didn't know how she would handle this. Had she failed her son? Had she failed to notice something like that had been happening to her only child? He was her baby, the light of her life since Hisashi left her. Then again, she was more than happy he was gone. He didn't deserve to be in Izuku's life. The thought that someone had put their hands on Izuku anyway made her head hurt. She took a sip of her lukewarm water. She had done her best to help, with what little Izuku had actually told her. She would try her best to help from further on, although she was increasingly worried about her son's well-being. She would have to get him therapy. Maybe she could switch from part-time to full-time accounting. Inko knew she also would need to have a talk with Izuku about being secretive, whether the mentioned abuse had happened or not. She couldn't have Izuku hiding the things that had happened. If it had happened, then did that mean Izuku didn't trust her? Or did it mean that Izuku was afraid that she would react like the principal? She shook her head. It didn't matter right now. She had learned it was the English teacher. It wouldn't take much work to find him on the school's website. She dug through Izuku's old school documents, happily reading through his schedule. A cruel smile lit up her face when she read his name. Well, Mr. Higa, I really hope you aren't too fond of your fingernails. She stood up. It was time to look him up on the address listings. If anyone wanted to know why she was determined to figure out that man's day, she would simply say it was to help the investigation. Although that wasn't far from her mind, the only reason she could think of, the one thing that burned deep in her mind was clear. Vengeance. Hisashi smiled. He liked the idea of threatening a principal, especially one who had helped cause harm to his student. He tapped his foot as the secretary ignored him. He frowned, sitting down on an orange bench. "Do you have a meeting, sir?" The lady smacked the gum in her mouth, making him frown. "No, I dash." "Then you can't see him." Hisashi took a deep breath. Nemuri had already gotten the elementary school footage as they stored a large sum of it. "Ma'am, I don't think you understand, I dash. I'm not allowed to let you in. We need to speak to the principal to further our case dash. I definitely can't let you in then." Hisashi blinked. "Do you know how often some fat CNT came in here asking to speak to him?" "No, you don't." "I turned her away again and again, so unless you came here with a warrant or a pro-hero license, you can promptly leave." Hisashi gave her a mocking smile. "Unless I have a pro-hero license, huh?" He pulled it out of his wallet, waving it in front of the daft secretary. "Well, look what I've got. A license. Maybe now I can speak to that elusive principal now." The lady paled and then nodded. She nodded her head towards the door on her left. "Principal Ito's office, he just finished lunch." Hisashi nodded and walked in, not bothering to knock. A bit of rudeness was deserved, especially for anyone who thought helping to hurt Midoriya was fair or just. The balding man jumped when Hisashi came in. What are you dash?" "I'm here to get a copy of your security footage from the last 3 years." Hisashi frowned at the sweaty principal. "Well, that's a bit sudden." "No, it's not. You received an email yesterday informing you a pro, such as myself, would be here to take it." He tapped his foot in annoyance. He liked how uncomfortable Mr. Ito looked. "Yes, but dash." "But nothing, you need to provide me with the footage or I'll have to arrest you for obstructing furthering of justice." The smaller man shook his head. "You shouldn't threaten your elders dash," Hisashi groaned. "You lost all respect from anyone worth a sheet when you acted discriminatorily towards a helpless child." Hisashi watched him cover a small flash drive with his hand. "I'll go get them when you stop being a dash." "Isn't it under your hand? In the UA flash drive you were given." Izuku sat on his bed, reading into Quirk history. His phone buzzed, and he picked it up, expecting it to be an answer in his group chat. Unknown number? He thought he had his name removed from spam callers and telemarketers lists. He swiped open his phone to the message, feeling a part of him stop when he read it. One hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 hashtag. "Things haven't been the same since you graduated." Izuku's stomach churned. Was that who he thought it was? Didn't he block that man's number? Who's this? One hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 hashtag. "Did you really forget about me? I thought I was your favorite teacher." Izuku felt bile rise in his throat. He tossed his phone aside and found himself on his knees by his wastebasket. Stomach acid left a sweet residue on his tongue. He lost more of his little lunch and sat back onto his heels, putting his head between his knees. "Oh no!" He rocked silently, trying to ignore the whispers of thoughts rushing around in his mind. How had he found him? Did he know where he was? Why did he have to message him as soon as the nightmares stopped being constant? His phone buzzed again and he felt hot tears splash down his face. He didn't hear whoever knocked, or even when they opened the door. "Izuku, are you all right?" Tenya's voice made him glance toward the door. Tenya stood in the doorway, dressed completely casually. A look of concern laced his expression. Tenya closed the door behind him, sitting down next to him on the floor. "What happened?" Izuku lifted his head and a new wave of nausea hit him like a wave. He dry heaved into the wastebasket, Tenya rubbing his back when he finally stopped. "Are you sick?" He pressed a warm hand to Izuku's sweaty forehead. "You're kind of warm, but I don't think it's a fever. I should probably go get a teacher." Tenya tried to get up, but Izuku wrapped himself around his arm. "I am alright. Jay just upset." Tenya crosses his legs, letting Izuku lay against him. "Okay, but if your stomach gets upset again, please tell me I could get you some anti-nausea." Izuku nodded against his partner's shoulder, feeling a wave of drowsiness make his eyelids heavy. He dozed off almost silently as Tenya got ready to heft him onto the bed. Tenya sat with Izuku leaned on him, softly dozing. After dutifully tossing the wastebasket trash into the main trash, he sat down next to Izuku, who had fallen asleep what felt like hours ago. Izuku's phone buzzed from a few feet away. Assuming it was Shoto, he picked it up. One hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 hashtag. Did you really forget about me? I thought I was your favorite teacher. I miss you, Izuku. Tenya put the phone back down, pretending he didn't read it. Who was that texting Izuku? Was it a past teacher of Izuku's? If so, why was the number unknown? Why did the messages feel threatening? Izuku pawed at his tired eyes. What are you doing? He mumbled, still precariously slumped against Tenya. Tenya frowned. He should come clean. It would be the right thing to do. I need to apologize, Izuku. Izuku gave him a sideways glance. What? The greenette pulled his head away from Tenya's shoulder. I made the assumption that Shoto was the one who texted you. I should not have opened your phone without permission dash. It's fine TT Tenya. The previously sleepy greenette waved his hands around fully awake. Tenya watched Izuku try his best to explain away something that did not need explaining. It's not like why you am meant to Tenya. Yes, it was quite the accident. Tenya pushed his glasses up further. I didn't know you were still in contact with past teachers. You must have been close. Tenya watched Izuku's now pale face tense up. Was something wrong? Was he going to get sick again? Why I guess. Hizashi typed at his computer, sending another email to Chio. She kept asking if they knew anything new, although she knew the answer was no. Nedzu was sorting through the footage still. Filtering out 3 years of Midoriya from the rest of the footage was a lot. Even with a computer program doing the actual sorting, he still needed to go through and find the parts it would have skipped over. Namuri texted him asking if she could have Eri after school. No, you can't. He mouthed it out as he typed, smiling when the 3 little dots appeared. 3 sharp knocks made him look up. You can come in. He called. The door to the teacher's office opened to reveal a polo-clad Ida. His face twisted in a form of worry. Yamada-sensei? Ida twisted his fingers around each other. Hizashi hadn't thought of him as a nervous kid. What can I do for you, little listener? He smiled, trying to welcome the class rep into his room of solitude. I have something I found worrying that I feel needs to be communicated to a member of the staff. Hizashi nodded. Go ahead, little listener. Someone, a past teacher of Aizawa Midoriya, contacted him today, and I just can't get it out of my mind that they did not have good intentions. Hizashi nodded, the somewhat good feeling he had starting to wilt. I don't mean to assume, but Midoriya's reaction just didn't settle with me. Thank you for telling me, little listener. Go back to the dorms, I'll look into it, I promise. Ida nodded and slipped out of the office. Hizashi picked up his phone and pulled out the group chat. One of Midoriya's old teachers is contacting him. Go to sleep. WTF? How do they have his no? Granny. You do have an update, you liar. How do you know? Ratman Dunanan. This is quite the problem, sad face. Ida told me. Should I bring it up with young Midoriya when I see him? WWGD? It what that means? Let's just watch the footage and make the arrests. Ratman Dunanan. Still sorting. Granny. We do need to address this. We could always talk to Midoriya. Not like we did yesterday morning, that went terribly. I could talk to young Midoriya when we train tomorrow. Do you call his mom old Midoriya or isn't Ratman Dunan? That sounds like a very good idea, Toshinori. Yeah, it might work, but none of that breaking bones stuff. Granny. I agree with Aizawa. I'll go get him then. Do you guys think we should maybe let him sleep right now? It's night time. What's happening? Go to sleep. Read up. Toshinori sat down, looking around the room at his fellow staff members. Nedzu at the head of the table, a somewhat pleasant smile on his face. As you know, the Aldrin school system is under investigation for quirk discrimination, mostly pointed at Midoriya Izuku. We know that they excused physical, emotional, and SXL abuse. We also know that one of Midoriya's past teachers is contacting him, which needs to be stopped. After this meeting, we have collected a series of footage from Midoriya's school years, which we will need to review. I warn you now, it may get graphic. It won't be with sound, except for a few clips. The principal found it necessary to erase a good majority of the quality audio, but we will still review it and make sure those responsible will be put away. There was a murmur of agreement as Nezu hoped down and turned on the compilation. The small child scenes weren't bad, light teasing and the occasional backhanded compliment. Toshinori smiled at young Midoriya's wide smile as he played with Bakugo. Then the feeling of the room changed. It went from small frowns at the teasing to upset expressions the more Bakugo was on screen. Toshinori watched as a very small Midoriya tried to protect a small boy from Bakugo. It didn't end well for Midoriya. It got worse. It went from a few bullies to more and more kids. Midoriya stepped in between Bakugo and several other children, each time ending in a similar result. Toshinori bit his lip as Bakugo hit Midoriya hard enough to crack his nose. He seeked in a deep breath when someone left white chrysanthemums on his mentee's desk in 4th grade. He heard Namuri angrily chew her pen. It got worse. Bakugo continued his merciless bullying throughout elementary. It got worse almost every time. The teachers made Toshinori the angriest. They either ignored the abuse right next to them, and one or two of them joined in. They finished angry, even though they had merely finished elementary school. Toshinori felt sick, like something was struggling around inside of him. I see we should probably take a break. Nezu stopped the compilation. Namuri was arguing with Aizawa and Mike about something to do with charges. Toshinori sat back, trying to ignore the guilt that settled in his stomach before Nezu got those three silent enough for them to continue. For nearly 40 more minutes, the screen was lit up by near constant assaults and exclusion. Words messily scribbled on his desk before he could get into the classroom each day. He would get in the way of Bakugo still, but it was never just Bakugo. There were always more students to ridicule or hurt his mentee. There were several minutes that had to be fast-forwarded through because he was unconscious. Midoriya was walking around with burns and blood on his black uniform. His mentee was almost always in a nearly constant terrified state. Sometimes he would start to cry when he heard the other kids coming. He shook, so badly you could see it on camera. Namuri's pencil snapped. They fed him dirt. They smacked his food out of his hands. The teachers allowed other kids to use their quirks on him. Even in class. He gave gifts to his teachers. Although he gained nothing in return. One of the teachers broke Midoriya's gift time and time again. If Toshinori could rewind time, he would have warned his past self that he would watch Midoriya's assault brought on by a sick man. He would have. The rest of the interactions between that man and Midoriya were similar in nature. Namuri was the only person he dared to look at, and rage bubbled out of almost every orifice. Namuri stormed out of the room when Bakugo told Midoriya to take a swan dive. Toshinori found himself following her. Mike and Aizawa not far behind. It was time for violence and Inko. Izuku woke up in bed, with the lingering feeling of hands on him. He put his head in his scarred hands, trying to slow his racing heart. "You're so stupid." Izuku pulled his blanket over his head, in a futile attempt to make the tired whispers stop. "No one would stop me." He swallowed the lump in his throat. Izuku's skin started to itch. He ran his fingers over the bumpy scabs on his legs. Then he did it again, and again until the scabs had been flaked away, allowing a bubble of blood to rise from spotty lines on his upper thighs. "You assume anyone would care if I made you disappear." His phone buzzed again and hot tears ran tracks down his face. He was going to disappear, wasn't he? When his teachers found out about him and that he was quirkless, then they'd kick him out. Then All Might would take back his quirk, then his mother wouldn't want him anymore. Why would she want someone who couldn't even stay in school? No one else would have you. Then not even a shelter would take him. Izuku would be lucky if anyone took him in. For sharp knocks made him jump. It was past curfew at least, so who was outside his door? Izuku tore at his nails as someone knocked again. His phone lit up with a text as he tried to kick it away. He had tried to block the number, but the texts came from a new one every time. The knocks came back as Izuku tore at his hair. The terrifying sound of his door creaking open made him still. Young Midoriya? His mentor's calm voice called into the darkness of his room. Why yes. He tried to ignore the croak in his voice. May I come in? Izuku nodded from under the blanket. His mentor shuffled into the room, clicking the door behind them. Izuku wrapped his arms around his knees. The bed shifted under his mentor's weight. He ignored his mentor's sigh, instead choosing to pick at his legs. Young Midoriya, may I ask why you're hiding under your blanket? Midoriya didn't move, hoping that his mentor would move on to the part where he told him it was over. That they had figured out what he did. How much he lied and how he always started it. A tug on the blanket disrupted his thoughts. He was unable to pull the blanket tight before it was completely moved from his face. Young Midoriya, have you been crying? Izuku nodded, ignoring the dark swirl of shame in his stomach. Heroes don't cry like that. Was it a nightmare? Izuku shook his head, slumping further into his All Might-themed blankets. I don't want TT to talk about it. All Might nodded, playing with his hands in his lap. A nervous gesture Izuku never remembers seeing in anyone but his mom and him. Young Midoriya, is it true that someone from your past has been contacting you? Izuku swore his mentor could see him pale. How dash. Never mind how I know young Midoriya, I just wanted to affirm the truth in it. Midoriya wilted, he had already messed up. He managed to put his mentor into a bad mood by being around. Now young Midoriya, is this true? Midoriya nodded, ready to accept his resignation. Then I will need to see your phone. Midoriya sniffled, and reached for its abandoned spot on the floor. He handed it over, ignoring the sight of his own trembling hands. All Might looked through the several different blocked conversations, his frown deepening with each one. When a new message showed up, he blocked that too. He stopped scrolling through the phone, making a small disapproving noise. Young Midoriya, you should have informed me when this started instead of waiting until young Ida saw and told a staff member. All Might put a skeletal hand onto Izuku's head. I'm guessing you already knew that, didn't you? Izuku pawed at his eyes again. Crybaby. None of that now, young man. He pulled Izuku closer to him, ignoring the imminent tear stains. Now, it's all right. He ran another set of skeletal fingers through Izuku's hair. I think you were just scared. Hopefully not of me, but scared nonetheless. All Might took a deep breath before squeezing Izuku. I hope in the future you'll come to me without second thought. Izuku struggled to breathe against the squirming feeling in his chest. Didn't WW want YUTT to BBM mad at me. Izuku was then shifted so both arms could wrap themselves around him. Young Midoriya, I could not be angry with you for something that wasn't your fault. It was MIF fault dash. Young Midoriya dash. IWS. PPR provoked K Kaken and NT the others. The T teachers WW would H have S stepped you up or otherwise. J just made it too much FF fun F for T them. IW is T the O1 WW who made T the TT teachers H hurt me. SS so Mr. H hi higa G gave me WW what IID didn't cake no IIW what W wanted. D deserved it. Izuku tried to reason it out, it was his fault after all, might as well know why. Young Midoriya, nothing done to you was your fault. But dash. Nothing done to you was your fault. You were surrounded by heinous people, who let terrible things happen to you. They shouldn't have tolerated it, much less participated in it. Anyone who would tell you differently, should no longer be associated with you. Yes, that includes you, Bakugo. Tomorrow you are going to be asked your opinion on Bakugo Katsuki, and I ask that you answer honestly. K Kakens S suppose TTDT to be a G great H hero dash. Why would Bakugo make a good hero? B because HEFF fought to this slime VV villain dash. So did you. He's really TT tough dash. You have a higher pain tolerance and put in more effort than he has. HEW is K kidnapped B by T the L League. Many people are kidnapped, and most face worse fates than he did. His Q quirk I is am amazing. Quirks are not everything, my boy. Nemuri walked down the hallway. Anger festered under her skin. She had listened to Midoriya explain why Bakugo should stay in the school. He's making progress. He's changing. It's not his fault no one stopped him. Kaken's a product of his environment. She grit her teeth, unsure of how Midoriya couldn't tell that what he was saying was wrong. It didn't matter that no one stopped him, well, that was an issue, but the main one was his lack of empathy, or his enjoyment of harming a helpless peer. He showed no grand improvement. He couldn't even tolerate Midoriya's quiet muttering. He told people to die, threatened, and occasionally beat his friends. He gave Midoriya a wound so bad it was in need of stitches, for God's sakes. That's to say, Nemuri was more than grateful when Nezu decided to punish him accordingly. Nemuri was still disappointed. Expulsion wasn't an option on the table at the moment, not with the league making him a target. At least his punishment would almost certainly keep him from hero work. She took a deep breath. She couldn't be too angry when she confronted him. The leftover festering rage from this morning was enough to make her feel sick. And she thought she'd been angry when the elementary principal had confessed to putting hands on him. She came to the door. Knocking was easy, waiting for the little sheet to open the door was not. The door swung open, revealing a confused Kirishima. Is Bakugo in there? She frowned at the harshness in her own voice. Yeah, we were just studying dash. She needed Kirishima to leave. Go to your dorm to study. What dash? Go. Kirishima gave her a confused look before sliding out of the room, bag over shoulder. The F, you making him go for? Nemuri clicked the door shut behind her. You need to settle down. Bakugo gave her an ugly frown. You don't like me and I definitely don't like you. So here's how this is gonna go. You're going to sit there and hope I don't flip out on you, and I am going to tell you what we've decided. About what dash? About your punishment for dash. For effing you what? I didn't dash. You didn't what? Help further the abuse of one of your classmates. He effing you deserved everything he got. He didn't deserve anything dash. That where flirted with the teacher and got what was coming to him. Nemuri was struggling to refuse the urge to hit him. Bakugo, you are no longer in the hero course. You've been moved to the Gen Ed course, with little to no chance of returning. You won't even be allowed in the sports festival until your new counselor suggests it. You can't if you do that. He popped little sparks in his hands. Let's see about those quirk-suppressant cuffs until you can stop being a little sheet. Nemuri took out her phone. Let me guess, you want them in orange? She repressed the smile on her face at the boy's shocked look. And no dash. Yes, believe it or not, you're facing consequences. Nemuri stood up. I have to go teach my class. She went to leave, stopping near the door. She glanced over her shoulder at the boy. You should probably call your mother before Nezu does. With that she walked out, happy to have served part of the justice. That was that DMN nerd's fault, wasn't it? Now he couldn't be number one, all because he had managed to twist a tale to make everyone but him the bad guy. Pathetic. That nerd wouldn't get away with that. Not with the future number one around. All Katsuki had to do was look up a number. So Izuka didn't come to any classes today? Shoto shook his head. Izuka hadn't shown his face at all today, no matter how often his partners had messaged him he hadn't answered. Tenya stepped up to Izuku's door, his knocks sounding louder than Shoto expected. You can come in. Their boyfriend's small voice called from the other side of the door. Shoto pushed through the door, blinking in the darkness of the room. Izuku, you shouldn't sit in the dark like this, it can affect your vision. Tenya flipped on the light switch. Izuku was wrapped around his legs, face resting atop of them. A large bruise spreading down the side of his face. What happened? Shoto sat down heavily on the bed as Tenya joined him. It's and no, not my important. Shoto frowned. Did you break your phone, Izuku? Izuku shook his head. And no, all mitt took it. Is that why you didn't answer us dash? Why yes, IIW wanted to TT talk about WWIHETT took it. Did you ask him if he slept with your mother dash? Shoto, that is very inappropriate for a serious conversation dash. But did you dash? No, Shoto. He's not sleeping WW with MIM. Shoto frowned. Had All Might been sent to the couch? IIAAC actually got I in T30 trouble B because O of YUT Tenya. Shoto sent Tenya a look. W dash. B because YYUTT told P present M Mike A about T the messages. What messages? Shoto was confused. Was he being sent to the couch? Or was he just out of the loop? TT the ME messages W with my T teacher. Shoto watched Izuku take a deep breath. A all M might SS says W what HED did W was WW wrong. W whether IW was quirkless or N not. B but either W everything GG going on is B because of ME. Shoto gave Tenya a glance. What exactly is going on? MIS school is B being in I investigated BBB because T the TT teachers FF found O out A about my P past. And now K catchins in trouble dash. Why would you be the reason for all of that? Izuku gave them a look. You'd BBSS surprised. A grayish blonde was slumped across a ugly green couch. He scrolled through pictures of a younger Izuku Midoriya. A nasty smile crept on his face. He liked that one. And the one after that. He missed that little freak. His mop of curly hair. His freckle-spattered face. The way he gave in. Such a feeble mind on such a smart boy. It was just sad, although it was amazing how easily he was convinced not to go around spreading lies. He looked at his phone, still no replies. He would need another phone number. Thank God for old apps like Text Now. He smiled at a particularly upsetting picture. Maybe he could go looking for him, convince him to go to his apartment with him. Then he might be able to finish what he started. Then he wouldn't be under the pro-hero's gaze anymore. The man went to Izuku's next picture, the one of him smiling from the sports festival. God, he wanted to wipe that smile off his stupid face. His home phone rang and he begrudgingly answered. Yes. Hey, a voice of his former student muttered. I heard you wanted to know more about that shitty Deku? A smile fluttered to his face. Of course I would Bakugu. Izuku surprisingly was not enjoying the day with his mother. He went from store to store and he enjoyed it. He really did. It was just he felt like he was being watched. Every time he turned around no one was there, making the uneasy feeling when he turned around feel much more sinister. Izuku honey? Why yeah. Izuku looked at a bag of apples. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? Why yes. Not just the good things either. You're my baby, I wouldn't care if you did something really bad, or if something bad happened to you dash. W what are YUT talking about His mom buried herself into moving around different groceries. Izuku, do you trust me? Izuku blinked. Of course he trusted his mother. She was the first and often the only person to trust. She had never treated him poorly, even though Izuku was sure he was a pretty big bother with his muttering and constant unreachable goals. She had been the best mother he could have hoped for. Why yeah, why you're MIM. Izuku watched as his mother took a deep breath. I know about your teacher. Izuku felt like his world stopped. We're going to wait to talk about it when we get home. So she was waiting until they got to her house to tear into him? That didn't sound like his mother. But then again, he's never been kicked out before. Izuku honey, calm down. She wrapped an arm around her son's middle. We don't even have to talk about it tonight. Her words would have calmed the aching pool of dread in his stomach if the feeling of being watched hadn't popped back up. He looked over his shoulder to see someone he never wanted to see again. Standing about 10 feet away was a grayish blonde man. Izuku was forced to watch as the man smiled and waved at him. Before disappearing into another aisle. Mom, we should get a cab home, I'll pay for it. Inko sat next to her son, not knowing quite how to start the conversation. Should she just start talking? Should she wait until after he starts? No, she would have to start this insufferable conversation. Izuku, no one else has done dash. And no Are you lying to dash? No, I'm not. Izuku, I just wanted to make sure dash. Why you don't need T to WWO worry Inko blinked. If there was a time to worry about Izuku it was now. She fiddled with her fingers. Izuku, honey, why wouldn't you tell me about dash? T this S said T's the peepa police W wouldn't do and anything, B because I W is QQ quirkless. Why you would have wasted your TT time? Inko stared at her boy. Her baby who had grown so much since going to UA. You still could have told me. You know I would have listened. She watched her son curl into himself. I can no to that and now. Inko frowned. It's partially my fault. I should have pushed harder against the secretary, or just took the time to ask you what was going on with you. Izuku leaned against her. TWBB Han honest IIW is itch hiding a L lot FFR from YU. No wonder I didn't find out. You're too smart for me. Izuku gave her a small smile. And not really, IW is J just am making a bad decision. Promise me you won't keep me any further out of the loop? Inko kept tugging at her fingers. Surprised neither of them had burst into tears. Izuku nodded, a small frown tugging at his face. I'll try harder. But it's hard to do. Inko nodded, tugging her son a little bit closer. She didn't trust that it would last, but maybe she would just have to remind him. Why did you want to go home in a cab so badly? She watched her son stiffen. Chev T to dash. Yes Izuku, then we can watch the All Might movie you love so much. Izuku seemed to battle out his options in his head. He bit his lip. IIWW is FF feeling WWWWHT, so ITT turned AR around and Mr. H Hi Higa W is W watching ME dash. Inko's stomach dropped. Are you serious? Izuku nodded before shrinking into the Oh no, baby it's okay, Amami just has to make a phone call to your teachers. She handed him the remote before hurriedly searching for her cell phone. Inko couldn't believe she didn't notice someone following them. You can turn on your movie baby, I'm gonna be a minute. Toshinori rested his eyes on his couch. He groaned when another message came through Midoriya's phone. No wonder he had been crying, that BSU was lighting up his phone every couple of minutes. He might as well turn it off and let him dig his own grave. He held the button until a black screen and silence was the only result. He went back to resting his eyes while the TV muttered in the background. Everyone was angry at the school, the court was giving them an extended time until they could receive a warrant, and they were threatening to extend it further. It was like the legal system didn't care about a child going through heinous amounts of abuse. What were they to do without a warrant? They could always arrest Higa for contacting a minor in SXL regards, but then what would they do about the others? Wait for them to hurt another quirkless child? Toshinori couldn't help but remember Midoriya's crying face. Had they truly been able to see that face every day and hurt him? Toshi couldn't imagine such a thing, and he had seen it recorded with his own 2 eyes. Sick people. If Toshinori was a villain, he would like to think he would have killed those kinds of people. Those horrible people. His phone called out his signature, I am here, alerting him to a phone call. He scooped it up, Inko's name lighting the screen. Yes. Toshi. Inko's worried voice made him frown. Is something dash? That awful man followed us through the store today. What? I didn't even notice. What if something happened to Izuku or dash? Wait, Inko, which terrible ma dash? Higa was following us around dash. Toshinori really regretted not going to arrest him already. Are you both alright dash? Yes, we're fine, but I don't know what to do. Should we send Izuku back to UA? Should I keep him here? What if he followed us dash? Inko, calm down. I doubt he would be brazen enough to break into your apartment, much less to harm your son, especially not with you walking around. If someone does, you are more than welcome to put your quirk to good use. Inko made a sound of agreement. I was going to bash their skull in with my bat, but my quirk might be more defensible in court. Toshinori couldn't help but smile. I'm sure the judge would find either acceptable. Toshi, could you send someone to pick Izuku up in the morning? We don't have cab money, and dash. I would be fine with picking him up tomorrow. Now to call Netsu. She shifted uncomfortably, squinting at the light that erupted from her phone. Aren't you into Granette's vampireth? Of course. They're so adorable. What was with her online group and stupid questions? I know one that gives good BJ, she frowned. What was the point of having her pronouns and age in her bio if no one would listen? Okay, so? So, I have pictures, Himiko frowned. Gross. Don't do that. No subject image, she sighed, clicking it open. A picture of her Izuku in a compromising pose lit up her screen. I told you you'd like it. Aren't you like 35? So, my Izuku is like 13. Himiko waited angrily for a reply. Actually, he's 15 now, he was 13 in the picture. Himiko resisted the urge to throw her phone. Don't talk to me again. Why? Himiko's fingers flew over the keyboard before blocking the nasty user. Because I would never want to be friends with someone like you. Nedzu sat behind the large wooden desk, drinking his favorite blueberry tea. He searched his emails hoping to find that the request for the warrant had been approved, but to no avail. Yagi had delivered a phone in an all-might case this morning after informing him about the stalker-esque behavior. Yagi had told him that there should be more than enough damning evidence against Higa. Nedzu was wrong when he assumed that someone with a college degree would be smart about where they sprinkled evidence. Even a beginner at this whole blackmail game wouldn't use their own phone. At least buy a burner phone for Pete's sake. Nedzu opened blocked conversation after blocked conversation. The beginning ones just basic flirts and attempted guilt trips. The further he got down the list of blocked numbers, the more irate the man became. He threatened Midoriya, and tried to convince him of some awful mindsets, such as the belief that the man could just, poof, make him disappear, much less that no one would look for him. Then demanding meetings and eventually pictures. Nedzu frowned, at least Midoriya had just blocked the man before his mentor confiscated it. The conversation left unblocked was more sinister. The man had switched from asking for pictures of a minor to showing pictures of disturbing things being done to said minor. Nedzu grimaced. The only upside to looking through the phone was knowing he could have Higa arrested for obtaining and possessing child pornography. He would of course need to report it to the local authorities before taking it into his own hands, but that would take a matter of minutes. It was time to gather his favorite 3 acting heroes. Breaking news. Local junior high teacher in critical condition. He was found in a ditch last night. Doctors say he was covered in multiple stab wounds, burns, and part of his chest seems to have miraculously disappeared. His family says they have no idea who would want to harm Higa. Detectives say if it wasn't for such a powerful force field quirk, he would have been killed. His young sons and daughter have made him a GoFundMe page to make sure they can afford this divorced father's necessary surgery. How the F did that if I survive? I put a effing hole in his chest the size of my hand. Himiko frowned. She would have thought their combined efforts would have killed him. Even twice had gotten in a good kick. Maybe he'll die from the injuries later in the hospital. Quit throwing shit. She ignored their arguing. If Kurogiri wasn't locked away, it would already be over. He's lucky someone was coming. She muttered. Twice slid up behind her. Poor man, he was kind. He had it coming. You're right, he did have it coming. We did terribly. We tried our best and that's what matters. I think we could have done better. But I mean, we did work with what we had. Leave me alone, you reject pleather bag. The nurse walked down the hallways, waving to a familiar face. Her tennis shoes made a squealing sound on the floor as she made her way down to her newest healed patient's room. She opened the door, startled to be greeted by an empty room. She checked the number outside the door to see that she was in fact in the right room. That's strange. She speed-walked down to the nearest nurse's station, stopping to ask a question. Did someone move Higa? The redhead at the station frowned. No, Gana came in and healed him after his surgery. He went home. May blinked at her. Higa wasn't supposed to be discharged. Yeah, I know, but you know how it is, patients always going home against the doctor's orders. She shook her head. No, after he was done healing he was going to be picked up by heroes. Why? May glanced around before leaning in. He has a warrant on his head for the SXL abuse of a minor. She hissed at the now pale redhead. Izuku walked out of the store, cookie mix and other pastries in a thin plastic bag. If he did it right, these would be delectable. He walked down a thin street, nerves working up at the lack of street lights. He heard footsteps behind him, causing him to spin around. No one was on the street behind him, so he carefully turned around, anxiety burning through his chest. When had it gotten so dark? He started to walk faster. What had he been thinking? He wasn't tough enough to walk alone at night. Izuku turned onto an empty, fully lit street. The squeal of tires in the distance made him flinch. It was okay, he could see the UA gate. It's not like anyone would just snatch him from in front of a big school with big cameras. It's all fine, Izuku. He muttered, furthering down the street. A sharp pain in the back of his head suddenly changed his mind. He landed on his chest as his vision blurred and spotted. The pain in his head only seemed to sharpen as footsteps came toward him. He couldn't seem to move his limbs. Pain sprouted from the different spots in his body as he was pulled back off the ground. His assailant carried him towards what Izuku could tell was a gray blur. His head hung limply like it had swollen up another 50 pounds. The blur in his vision got worse as an uncomfortable carpet let him settle onto it. An all-too-heavy hand ran through his tangled hair. The tugging feeling from it hurt almost as badly as the continuously spiking pain that spread through his nerves. "I told you I could make you disappear." A voice that he never wanted to hear again hissed at him. The loud slamming of something over him made his immobile body once again racked with an unsolvable sharp pain. What would he do? Goya paced around. Shouldn't Midoriya have beaten him back? He definitely shouldn't have been able to be the first one back. Hadn't that kid grown up in Mizudafu? Yamada walked by him. "Hey Goya, you and Midoriya back already?" Mickey pressed his lips together and shook his head. Midoriya might have gotten lost. Yamada blinked at him. "You didn't walk with him?" Goya dash. I know, but he finished shopping first dash." "So you let him go?" I fed up dash. "Oh, did you? I didn't FNG notice. Why didn't you just make him wait?" "He's 15. I'm not his mother dash." "Dimon, right, you're not. His mother knows better than to let him go by himself as a target." Yamada hissed at him. "I'm going to go look for him." "Yeah, you do that." Izuku pushed himself up from the floor he was lying on. There felt like a massive bubble of pain resting above his neck. He reached back to touch it, ignoring the burning pain in his limbs. It was clearly swollen around something stuck to it. He wobbled on shaky arms as he tried to crawl across the tiled floor. The buzz that came with one for all barely littered under his fingers, like he could no longer force it out of hiding. He was just glad it made the pain dull. Even with the lights off, his vision spotted and spun. He gripped the doorknob like a lifeline as he tried to pull himself up. His knees gave out on him his first 2 tries, leaving him in awkward scrambled positions on the floor. He hauled himself to his feet as muted voices whispered about him escaping. He wobbled like he had never walked before. He held himself up with a tiled wall and twisted at the doorknob until the door swung away from him. He held a hand to the wall and wandered into the dark, spotty house. It was too easy to get to the wooden door on the other side of the house. It wasn't locked? Izuku's painful body developed a new ball of dread as he wandered outside. It was still nighttime, which was good. That meant he hadn't been gone for long. He saw a car idling nearby and decided to promptly hobble the opposing way. He wasn't going to get picked up again, not if he had anything to say about it. He let the buzz of one for all burn under his skin, still unable to bring it out far enough to hop away. So what is Izuku? You can lift a truck without one for all, why can't you defend yourself without it again? That's right, isn't it? Izuku's stronger than a lot of people. Mr. Higa can catch his foot in his throat if Izuku wanted him to. Even if he didn't have a weather-changing quirk anymore, it's not like he's helpless, even if it's increasingly hard to move. Izuku stopped, moving, arm holding him up as he took sharp breaths. Even summoning one for all was becoming painful. What had been done to him? There were too many blanks to make Izuku comfortable. A painful sensation burned around his middle as someone picked him up. As soon as his feet left the ground, he started kicking without abandon. He threw his head back, attempting to catch the owner of the arms with his head. When his head collided with Higa's nose, he heard it crack. He was dropped onto the ground, sharp sparking pain sputtered through his body. He tried to get to his feet before a foot took him back down. He glanced at Higa from below, blood spattering down from his nose. Are you effing stupid? The familiar feeling of one for all left him as he was half dragged down the street. Why the F would you assume you could leave when you could barely walk? Izuku wrapped a scarred hand around Higa's, attempting to ease the pain of being pulled by his hair. He was sure if he wanted to, Higa could kill him. But does that matter? Either way, Higa would go to prison, with most likely no chance of parole. Higa dragged him back into that bathroom, managing to put a struggling Izuku into a tub. He sat down on the toilet seat lid, a frown on his face as Izuku glared at him. Focusing on the pain of banging his head against the tub helped shove his fear to the side. Now Izuku wishes he would keep his name out of his mouth. I realize that the way I picked you up might have come off as strong, but you and I need to have a talk. Izuku's hair had blood drying in it. There wasn't going to be much more talking as soon as his muscles stopped acting like they had atrophied. Well, you've been telling lies about me, and they're just so absurd. I mean, I never did anything to you you didn't deserve. And I mean, most of the time you were almost begging for it. The memories. Izuku didn't want to have tried to sweep him away again. He focused on the pain in his head as he lightly tapped it against the rim of the tub. He couldn't afford to get lost. Not while he was watching him like that. Higa shifted. You and I gotta leave in an hour or so, thanks to all these pro-heroes you have believing you. Izuku ground his head against the metal of the tub. It clicked repetitively against the thing against the back of his head. Higa shut the door behind him and Izuku stared at it after it clicked. Regardless of Higa's plans, he would not be staying. After all, you should never hide restraintless victims in a room with a window. Izuku doesn't remember what he did to his nose, he just knows it's bleeding. It's like the more his head hurts, the less he remembers. He needs some water. He can practically feel his mouth caking up. Another gray car drives by as Izuku tries to hide just out of sight. Not happening again. It's tiring to pop in and out of dark spots not to be seen. It would be easier to get home if he could read the street signs. But he can make do. It would help if he'd stop forgetting what was going on. The nausea burning in his stomach doesn't help his fears. He stopped walking, the world twirling around him. He sat down onto the ground. He could afford to rest. Yeah, just rest his eyes and then go back to UA later. Then he could lay down somewhere soft and take a nap. Maybe see Recovery Girl later, make sure everything's alright. Yeah, that would work. No one would bother him. I mean, he has blood all over his shoulders, and he's really dirty. At most they might assume he was homeless. Maybe when he wakes up his eyesight won't be as bad, and he won't be as lost. Then he can go back to school, or his mom, whichever one would want him first. Maybe when he wakes up he'll be able to use one for all more, and then he can get going. Hopefully no one would call the police about it until he got back up. Toshinori nervously fiddled with his tie as he walked towards the apartment building. Telling Inko her son disappeared was not something he wanted to do, especially not in person. For such a tiny woman, Inko was utterly terrifying when angered. Especially when the anger reflected from her son. At least the other pros are already searching for his young mentee. Hopefully he would be rescued with minimal injuries. At least they know who took him. Inko sat across the table from Toshinori, unsure of what he had just said to her. Excuse me? I said that Midoriya has been abducted. Inko's knuckles tightened around her mug. We know who took him, and we have several pro-heroes looking for him. Inko tightened her lips as the plates in the dish rack rattled. Toshi, honey. She tapped her finger on the table as the plates tried to escape their spots. Bring me my son. His skin burnt in irritation. Had he slept all day? Izuku's eyes were sticky and dry. His vision was less blurred, although the spots had grown larger, sometimes colorful, sometimes just the same gray-black. His limbs were numb, and when he tried to push himself off of the ground he fell back. Finding nothing feasible to pull himself up with, he let out an irritated groan, his throat aching as he did so. He needed water, and to get home. The first step was getting up, which had proved itself to be rather difficult. He could try to push himself off the wall, but if he fell over again he might not be able to get back up. He might not even make it back to UA. He was still so tired. Maybe he should sleep again. It was nighttime again, and someone was looking for him, right? They had to be. He was a student at UA and a future pro-hero, not to mention his mother. She definitely wouldn't let him disappear like that. His stomach growled as a protest to his thoughts. Was there anything to do about it? He could try to crawl, although he might be ran over. or he could risk pushing himself to get up. A pro hero would go on patrol sometime soon. The best thing he could do was wait it out. Maybe wait until morning to take a nap. Someone would come for him. Just because no one had before doesn't mean they wouldn't now. Right? Shota walked the rooftops, fearing the worst. Midoriya was on the news as missing, as he had been for the last 2 days. Midoriya had been on the students' and teachers' minds. Some clearly more worried than others, most showing concern for him, while some of them had tried to take matters into their own hands. Hisashi was constantly stating his worry for if they never found him, while Shota continued to worry they would find him, most likely in a ditch, or, if alive, absolutely traumatized. Although Shota wouldn't blame him for that, human brains aren't always logical when frightened, or stressed for that matter. Being busy with criminals while searching for your missing student was taking a toll on Shota. He couldn't nap much, at least he hadn't yet, proving to make the man more irritable. Without the 2 most troublemaking children in class, it was obscenely quiet. He felt no remorse for having Bakugo removed, and Mineta had it coming from the start. Maybe if they had looked at the profiles before allowing them to test Midoriya wouldn't have been around his tormentor longer than needed. It was too late for that now. Months had passed and Shota would have to admit his mistake in reading their behavior towards each other. It should have been obvious. The name-calling, the hitting, the threats, and Midoriya's reaction to it all. That must be why they say hindsight is 20. Shota muddled around from rooftop to rooftop, a feeling of grief settling in. Why on earth was he grieving? His student was only missing, nowhere near dead, at least not yet. He had no reason to believe he was dead, or even hurt. So why did it hurt like he saw him in a cask? 3 sharp whistles from below him cut off his thoughts. Exactly how he had taught them. He found himself standing in front of his dirty greenette student. Blood caked in his hair and stained the lower half of his chin. Midoriya Izuku, to put it simply, looked horrible. And Mr. Eraserhead. He croaked, sounding as bad as he looked. I saw why you up to there. I can knew why you'd here MIW whistle dash. That was a great idea, kid, you did great. He reached a hand out to touch his red face. Not happy to find it hot to the touch. Are you hurt? And no, sir. Shota frowned, he definitely looked hurt. Do you have water? We can get you some water at the hospital, problem child. Midoriya grimaced. I don't need hospital dash. Problem child you dash. IP promise I am and not hurt. Even if that's the case, Midoriya it's a formality dash. I just need help t to g get tt to ua dash. Midoriya dash. I see can't dash. Midoriya, I am taking you to a hospital, or to recovery girls medbay. That is final. Katsuki sat in his bedroom, he could hear his mother downstairs. Despite his hearing problems, he could clearly hear her talking to his father. I'm so glad they found him. So what if that DMN nerd was weak enough to be snatched? He should have checked behind him if he didn't want anything to happen to him. If he didn't try to protect himself, then was it even kidnapping? No, it wasn't. That FING wimp probably wanted it to happen. Get the extra attention after lying to the teachers about him and his junior high trauma. What if he's not lying? Deku was lying, he always got in the way of what he wanted. He couldn't have stopped him anyway. That FING where would have told someone. Who would care to listen? His auntie Inko would have listened, she wouldn't have let it happen. Right? You hurt him on purpose. Someone needed to teach Deku that the world is unfair. It's not like he killed him. Go take a swan dive off the roof of the building. He doesn't lie. He had to be lying. He was never tormented, he was the teacher's pet, he effing slept with one of them. Katsuki couldn't be wrong. If Katsuki was wrong, that meant he had purposely doxed Deku to his pissed, with the sole hope the man would harass him, and no one was that cruel, that was villain behavior, and Katsuki Bakugo was a future hero, one of the best. Not some piece of sheet villain. Katsuki was no useless Deku. He was going back into the hero course. And they'd figure out Deku was the liar. Then they'd all think he was so smart and ask him how he had known. Katsuki! His mother yelled from somewhere downstairs. Get your butt down here now, brat. We're going to go see Inko. A frown tugged at his mouth at the reply that had boiled into his mouth. He was in enough trouble as it was. I'm coming, you old hag. Hospitals are colder than recovery girl's office. His mom had almost cracked his rib when she hugged him. His nose wasn't broken, but he did have a bad concussion. People kept coming to visit him, his partners, friends, classmates, teachers. Everyone. Except the one person he knew wouldn't want to come. Kaken was nowhere to be found, hero course or otherwise. Izuku would never say it out loud, but he was grateful Kaken hadn't shown up. He was tense enough as it was. The smell of disinfectant doesn't help it. His mom is sitting in a chair nearby, trying to find a good place to get food from. A smile lit up her face. Izuku honey, Auntie Mitsuki, and Uncle Masaru are coming to visit you. Izuku forced a tight-lipped smile onto his face. He loved Mitsuki and Masaru. He didn't love having Kaken around. Not when his head hurt this much. Is Kaken coming? A small frown settled onto her face. Yes. They can't leave him alone right now, but he can wait outside, especially if you don't want to see him. Izuku sat propped up in a hospital bed, his auntie and uncle making small talk. He fiddled with his fingers. Sometimes they'd ask him questions he would meekly answer, before looking at his lap. Kaken stood near the doorway with a scowl on his face, the look of absolute hatred on his face twisting into something all too familiar. I'm so glad you made it out okay, Izuku. I actually had a pretty BB bad CC concussion. Mitsuki frowned, but she didn't say anything else. A quiet knock at the door captivated their attention first. His homeroom teacher leaned against the doorway, dressed somewhat formally. I'm sorry, I wasn't assuming you had company. Kaken scowled at his ex-teacher. Izuku stared into his lap. A chorus of, it's fine, came from most of the adults in the room. Actually, since I have you all here, can I speak to you? The adults shambled out of the room, all in agreement of something Izuku didn't get. Kaken dragged not far behind them. I'll be right back, baby, then we can order something to eat. His mother shut the heavy door behind her, a smile on her face. Izuku was left behind to force his way through his thoughts. God being his mother must be expensive. Why couldn't Aizawa-sensei just drop him off in the dorms? Or maybe to recovery girl's office? The door slid back open, revealing an angry Kaken, blocking the door. Completely alone. He slid the door behind him, blocking any sight into the room. Izuku shrunk back into his bed, as Kaken stormed toward him. Listen here, Deku. I know your little FNG mind games. And I'm not falling for that sheet. As soon as you're found out, you'll be lucky if you're still allowed to FING talk to a hero. Kaken hissed at him. You heard me, Deku. Get the cotton out of your ears and listen up. I know you started all of this, and I know you're the one who wanted me out of the hero course not in the hero course? He wasn't suspended? I didn't start anything Kaken Oh, shut up. I know you just wanted to get in my FNG way. That's all you want to do. Get on the teacher's good side, and try to drag me down. Kaken Kaken let out a quiet popping in his palms, seeming to be appeased when it frightened Izuku. I'm right, aren't I? You're a disgusting teacher's pet. No wonder the teachers FING ignored you. You didn't deserve their FING help. Izuku stared at his lap. Kaken would leave when he got bored. I bet you would sleep with anyone if they asked you to, even All Might in his skinny form. A gruesome smile lit up Kaken's face. That's why he's so close to someone as pathetic as you. That's all he wants from you. I bet that's why you turned in Higa. You just wanted a new person to... I bet if you could you'd sleep with all of our teachers at once MITT teachers. Why you're not a H-Hero SSDS student anymore. Izuku watched as Kaken's eyes twitched. That FNG teacher should have killed you when he had the chance. Izuku frowned as Kaken walked out on him. How did he know if he planned to kill him? Shota was confused, to say the least. The parents of Bakugo were trying to convince Midoriya's mother to press charges, which he did not expect in the least. He was told quite frankly they didn't believe they could punish him effectively for what he had done. Shota didn't expect the parents of such an irrational person to be so rational. He had somewhat expected Inko to be angrier, or at least more firmly placed in her decision. Sure, she had made it clear that she did want him punished, but she had been beating around the bush about charges, that is until Bakuga's mother had pushed her towards it. It was clear where Midoriya got his overly apologetic nature the more he spoke. That wasn't what he needed to worry about though. He needed to find that bastard, so he could make sure he rotted away in the worst prison he could get for him. Maybe afterward he could look into what Bakugo said when he thought he was out of earshot. Katsuki sat in the back seat of the family car. His parents hadn't said anything to him since he came back from the bathroom. The air in the car was tense. They rode in silence, not even a grumble from his mother when someone cut them off. They crunched into the driveway, the car doors remaining locked. Katsuki. His mother's voice was surprisingly dripping with venom. Your father and I need to have a talk with you. Katsuki glared at them from the back seat. Who did they think they were to lock him in a hot car with them? Why did you think it was all right to hurt your friend Katsuki? Shota sat across from a man he desperately wanted to hit. Higa's hands were handcuffed loosely to the table, a smile plastered somewhat firmly on his face. Nemuri had found and arrested him on patrol. The bruises that were inflicted, incidentally, in the struggle, were a mark of it. Mr. Higa, Aizawa hoped he didn't look as unhinged as he felt. You are aware as to what brought you to be under arrest. He frowned at him. I don't think I am. Shota let out a sound of disapproval. You were charged with several accounts of SXL assault, RP, harassment, possession of child pornography, and kidnapping. Aizawa watched as something behind the man's eyes changed. You're basing this off? We have received video evidence of the SXL assaults and the kidnapping. The victims, testimony, and a phone with the evidence of harassment and possession of child pornography. Higa didn't say anything, but he did frown. Trust me when I tell you that Midoriya Izuku is a liar. Aizawa frowned. Had he just forgotten the list of provable evidence pressed against him? I assure you I don't know anything about these dash. That's funny you said that, since I never mentioned your victim's name. Higa swiped at his mouth. Now why don't you drop the act and tell me what I need to know? Higa narrowed his eyes at him. Now tell me, how did you come into possession of Midoriya's contact information? Why don't you ask Bakugo? Shota stared at the man. Bakugo? What did he have to do with that? Bakugo wouldn't go around sharing sensitive information, not to a Pefli. Right? Bakugo was a very revengeful person, but Shota wouldn't believe he would go that far. Was a past student of his partially responsible for the further abuse and kidnapping of his other one? Bakugo had proven himself to be abusive in junior high, and not much had changed since then, but that seemed to be too much. I would like to see a lawyer dash. Shota scrolled through the call records for Higa's phone. Seeing way too many calls to Midoriya's phone. Bakuga's number was saved on the man's phone. A 14-minute call being the only occasion on which they had seemingly spoken to each other. Boy, would Shota like to know what they spoke about. The most important thing to do is to show the development to Nezu and wait for the warrants of the other teachers. Izuku's back was stiff from laying in bed for too long. Izuku wasn't allowed to leave the campus, even after Higa was placed under arrest. But that's fine with him. Now that he's confined to the school campus, things are easier. Everyone can find him, no matter what happens. No one has to look very far to find Izuku, to look at him pitifully, and act like he needs extra coddling, just because of some little concussion that had already been over with. No one babied Tenya when he did permanent damage to his hand, or when Kirishima got a large part of his skin broken off in that fight. They were training to be heroes for Pete's sake, not some class of toddlers. Izuku wasn't some defenseless Izuku. He was a future pro, not some kind of useless Deku. His teachers apologized to him. Teachers don't apologize, not to Izuku. Just because his usual nightmares have multiplied, or he asked his mom to buy him a nightlight. It's not because he's some crybaby. Heroes aren't scared of the dark, and they don't go around crying. He escaped his captor, he fought the sludge villain long enough for All Might to arrive, and he saves people. No one should pity him. Unless no one else saw all the progress he thought he made. Had he really just been crawling when everyone else had been running? Is he so far behind his classmates? He had been gaining control of his quirk fast, but he was years behind everyone else, and they had also been improving their quirks, some faster than others. So did that mean he was still years behind him? He hadn't even known how to use a quirk before the entrance day exam, and it activated once again, before he had time to think. He no longer broke his bones, sure, but there were 4-year-olds who didn't hurt themselves with their destructive quirks. He was no better than a small child at controlling his quirk? Did his peers and teachers look down on him behind his back? Were all the unnecessary praise on his quirk really sarcastic blows? Did Uraraka call him Deku for the same reason Kaken does? Your quirk is so cool, Deku. Did his friends hate him? If his friends hated him, did that mean his partners hated him too? Did he really assume everyone liked him because they didn't hit him? Izuku's fingers threaded into his hair. God, he was stupid. Ijiro didn't understand where Bakugo had gone. He just knows he is gone. Not in the dorms, and he rarely opened the Baku squad group chat. He had thought at first he had just been suspended, even though none of the teachers spoke about him. Were asked, they mostly dismissed the question. None of the other students seemed to know where he had gone either. Ijiro really wished he would be back soon, but when 2 weeks passed, Ijiro felt like his only friend had abandoned him. He walked down the school hallway. Why had Ms. Midnight visited Bakugo his last day in class? Had he done something? Sure, Bakugo was rude, aggressive, but that was just how he was. It wasn't like he ever hurt anyone. He didn't leave more than some yellowish bruises on his friends. Sure, he was mean to Midoriya and threatened him, but they're very good rivals. He used to be childhood friends with Midoriya. It wasn't like he'd actually hurt him. Bakugo was just passionate about becoming a hero, and that was very manly. Sure, he had tried to kill Midoriya during the first Villain v Hero test, but he was playing a villain. Even if he looked really happy about attacking him, or only went after Midoriya. Bakugo sure did seem to focus most of his anger on Midoriya, didn't he? Midoriya sure didn't seem too fond of being around Bakugo, and they had been friends. Had something happened? You'd think two people with awesome quirks and history would still be friends. Unless one of them had done something. Shut it with that, in a muttering Deku. Was Bakugo mean to Midoriya? Katsuki stormed around his room, quirk suppressants being the only thing that kept the boiling rage confined to under his skin. How dare that scarfed piece of sheet tell his parents about the abuse he laid into him? It was bullshit. Why the F? Did he think it was all right to get him in trouble? He was shouted at for almost an hour before he was allowed out of the DMN car. Deku was lucky he was suspended and grounded. Otherwise he would be the one to disappear. Deku didn't deserve all his friends, not when under All Might's quirk he was just some sniveling quirkless loser. No would have helped him if he didn't have a massive quirk to hide behind. Why couldn't that weirdo just kill Deku off? If Deku was dead, only Auntie would be sad, and she'd get over it fast. It's not like he was worth all the pain she was put through for him. She slaved over a quirkless speech that should have been miscarried. It was that FING slot's fault that his parents wouldn't speak to him, or that he was in the general studies with the likes of Mindfuck. It was never wrong when he used his quirk in class before, or when he gave someone what they deserved. But now it was suddenly so wrong, and he was such a FNG monster. Hypocrites. The old hag had played some dramatics, pretending like she couldn't look at him, while that asswipe tried to tear into him. That was some FING bullshit. They were down on the couch right now, looking through his phone. Probably going to see the few pictures of a hurt Deku he had. It wasn't his fault his friend wanted to know how to treat the scum of the earth. They needed a dummy, and Midoriya shouldn't have followed them for so long. God, he wanted to hurt something. Wanted to hear the stuttered apologies, and then begging for forgiveness he wouldn't get. The choked noises he would make every time he hit him, and the fear in his eyes. The scent of caramel and burning flesh in the air, along with the sight of blood leaking out of his mouth or nose, either place would do. The shaking painful sobs as Katsuki walked away. Even Katsuki knew that was too far, but it was so much fun. To watch Deku writhe under his gaze was hilarious. Maybe that's what he'd do. Maybe inform some of Class 1A what Deku had done in middle school. Then beat him into oblivion. He'd see those extras on the walk to classes, and he's share the information with them. Most likely Mina. Then it would spread like wildfire. Then no one would care if he beat him. To death or otherwise. Ashido hurried after a familiar blonde-haired man. I'm so happy to see you, where've you been? Bakugo grimaced, ignoring her question. You still into gossip, Raccoon Eyes? She fought the urge to roll her eyes. Of course I still like gossip, Bakugo. That's like asking a fish if they like water. He rolled his eyes. I've got some for you. Deku's laid up with all might. Ashido couldn't help but blink. What dash? There F&G. Ashido stopped walking. What? How would you even dash? Trust me, Raccoon Eyes, I knew him in junior high, and he hasn't changed a bit. Why do you think we stopped being friends? Ashido hesitantly nodded. He did know Midoriya best. He used to be an absolute menace in junior high. The only way he passed was to F around with our English teacher. What do you mean menace? He used to F around and F with the weaker kids. Ashido definitely didn't like the implication of that. Was Midoriya a bully dash? I thought that was FNG obvious. Or are you just FA stupid? Midoriya was a bully, with a powerful quirk. Who slept with the symbol of peace. But that's it, right? There's nothing else dash. Oh, there's a sheet load more. I just don't have the FNG time to tell you since I have to go to Gen Ed. Ashido frowned. Gen Ed? Why are you dash? Because that FNWG told the teachers a sheet ton of effing lies about me, and our teachers for no effing reason. Ashido frowned. Midoriya had been kidnapped, hadn't he? But didn't that teacher dash? That FENG man didn't do shit to him. Deku was effing hitting him up and asked him to pick him up. Then the dumbasses of teachers called it a kidnapping. Maybe Ashido should tell someone. It wouldn't hurt anyone if the rumors weren't true. If they were, then Midoriya would be treated accordingly, and they were rumors. Nobody should be friends with a bully, regardless of how nice they seem now. She should at least warn somebody. Bakugo wouldn't lie about something like that. He went to school with him for more than a decade. He would know him best. Izuku had 2 perfectly routine days, the only exception being the oncoming glances from Mina. But as far as he knew, it was just leftover pity. Today his whole secret hate theory had been nearly proven right. People in the hallways gave him dirty looks or stared. Shoto and Tenya were the only people who would speak to him before class, and even then it felt muddled. So what if everyone had hated him and were openly portraying it now? He survived it once, he could do it again. Why did they suddenly hate him now? He was well behaved and had a powerful quirk, and sure he was annoying, but he tried his best to be quiet about it. Unless they had found out who kidnapped him. The teachers had agreed not to talk about it, and he wasn't saying anything. Nervous nausea settled in his stomach. Everything was going to be alright, even if everyone hated him. Why should he care? If they didn't like him, it's not like they would hurt him. He had a quirk now. A powerful one. Nausea got worse in the quiet of the classroom, especially after Aizawa-sensei laid down. They were supposed to pick groups to work in, but they all seemed to just want to gossip, while Mina looked helplessly around the room. Shoto tried to gather his paper from inside his desk as Uraraka got to them. She leaned over her desk, hands laying heavily on it. Deku! Izuku blinked at the familiar nickname. Are the rumors true? I didn't know you were like that. Why did you think that was dash? Our rumors? What rumors? Who was saying what? She gave him a dark look. The ones about you. Everyone's heard them. Now are they true or not? Shoto scooted past her, while Izuku tried to ignore the taste of bile in his throat. Ignore her, Izuku. She doesn't understand that rumors can spring out of nowhere. I'm his best friend Todoroki. I know almost everything about him. I should know if he's some kind of abomination dash. Other people wondered over, Mina and Tenya included. Izuku didn't care. They knew he was quirkless, and that was the end of that. No friends. No partners. Just Izuku and a group of teens arguing above him as he fights the urge to throw up. Tears pooling into his eyes would have to be ignored. Because people like that shouldn't even try to be heroes. Why couldn't he have been born normal? They probably knew he needed someone else's quirk to succeed. No one here is sleeping with any teacher. A firm pat on his back made him nearly jump out of his seat. He really was going to be sick. They didn't just know about the quirklessness, but they knew about him. They thought he was nasty, didn't they? Bile rose past his throat and into his mouth. He needed to go. Mitter dash. Then he threw up his breakfast. Right onto his lap. At least people backed away from him. leaving an exceeding terrible scent and a coming into consciousness Aizawa. Namuri walked toward the gen ed classes, a police officer walking a few feet behind her. A certain class was about to lose its newest member. Shota rubbed his forehead. He sent Ida to fetch a janitor and problem child to the nurse. It was cleaned up, sure, but no one had seemed too enthusiastic to tell him what had happened. Some of the students had no idea what had gone on, while a few said they were just talking to him. He dismissed the class begrudgingly at the end of the day. No point in keeping them captive if they wouldn't talk. Mina stood in front of him after the majority of the class left, just fiddling with her hair. "May I help you, Dash?" "Aizawa-sensei, about what happened today, there are some rumors going around about Midoriya Dash." "Oh no. Bakugo told me this morning and I don't know who else he told, but almost everybody is talking about it. I'd like to assume that they were wrong, but I'm not close to Midoriya, and I don't know if they're true, but some of the kids don't think Midoriya should be in the hero course and Dash." "Bakugo spread them?" Shota asked. Mina nodded, looking at her hands. "I didn't tell anyone, so I think he might have spread it with someone else." Of course Bakugo had to ruin Midoriya's life, even when he was removed from it. He tried at the hospital, and now he was managing to hurt him more. What was wrong with him? "He said some pretty bad stuff, and I really didn't know what to do, Dash." "What did he say?" "He said Midoriya and some of the teachers were sleeping together, Dash." "Thank you, Mina. I'll take care of it." By stomping his fang head in. "You don't want to hear the rest?" "No, that's all right. I'll clear this up later in the dorms." Mina left seeming satisfied, and if Shota saw her hit someone later for spreading it further, he didn't say anything. Ochako crossed her arms. She needed to apologize to Deku. The whole class had to sit through a lengthy lecture about spreading rumors. Mr. Aizawa had given them an earful about harmful rumors, and not to mention crowding people. They weren't told what was actually happening. They were told that due to reprehensible past actions Bakugo would no longer be at UA. Ochako didn't quite understand what Aizawa had meant when he had said it wasn't his story to talk about, and that they were to leave him alone. Sure, they had made a mistake believing rumors, but she wanted to fix her mistake. She was one of his best friends, and if Deku was going through with something, then she needed to be there for him. Deku deserved to be comforted in his time of need, and who else but her? He trusted her, even if he didn't actively show it. "I'm his best friend Todoroki, I know almost everything about him, I should know if he's some kind of abomination." Maybe she didn't know him as well as she should have, but she could still apologize, and try to make up for her words. She hadn't meant for it to hurt him. Even with the pit in her stomach, she got up and headed to the elevator. Deku deserved the common decency at least. She made it to the door. Knocking 3 times didn't do anything, so she did it again. Deku didn't answer. He hadn't been down in the common area, he was supposed to be resting. "Deku!" A faint sound on the other side of the door. "Why you CC can't CC come I in?" Izuku's tearful voice rattled from the other side of the door. "Leave me alone, you are Uraraka." She frowned. "I'm here to apologize for earlier, Deku. Just open up." "No, it's fine. IIJ just WW want Dash." "Deku, I just want to talk with you, Dash." "And no, IIK can no W what YYUW want TT2 are really T-talk about Aya and I'm N not O opening my door for YYU." "Deku, I just want to apologize, and I have a question, Dash. Stop CC calling me that. I don't like it. I didn't like it then I don't like it now." "What?" Midoriya opened the door. What was wrong with using his hero name? IISS said, "I'll leave him Lalo alone." "Fine, if you don't want my apology, I'll find you something to eat. I'm going to make it up to you." It's what a great hero would do. She didn't get another response before she went back towards the kitchen, bound to feed her friend. Tashinori grimaced at the messages he had received. Young Bakugo would not be returning to UA, which was a blatant blessing, but the most concerning thing in the message was about the rumors he had started. What if a parent heard about it? What if a reporter found out about it? That could end terribly, for him and young Midoriya. Young Midoriya must be freaking out. Aizawa had said he threw up in class. Midoriya would probably be eaten up by those stupid rumors. He was already going through a mess of things and this definitely didn't help. He should go see him. Calm him down and reassure him. He would definitely take the time to visit young Bakugo. Then he needed to figure out who else was spreading these falsities. He found himself outside of young Midoriya's room, young Uraraka giving him a dry look. Is young Midoriya in there? He just won't open up. Toshi frowned. Has he spoken to you? Yes, he's spoken, but he won't let me in to talk to him. If young Midoriya wants to be alone, you should probably leave him be. She tossed him a somewhat refutable look before shaking her head. No one should be alone when they're sad. Many people prefer to be alone when they are upset. But young Uraraka, I will be with him soon. So I assure you no harm will come to him while he's with me. Toshinori barely caught the bowl of cooling katsudon. Fine then, make sure to feed him. Toshinori stared after her as she left him alone outside of his mentee's door. Young Midoriya Toshinori was cut off by his mentee opening the door. Thank YYUF for GGGG getting her TTT to L leave. I didn't want TT to talk T to HE her. That wasn't an issue, young Midoriya. I just thought you might need some consoling with everything going on. Thank YUBB but I am doing alright. Then we can just relax and talk about that Golden Age documentary you watched. Midoriya gave him a small smile. FF fine B but you and need TT and not CC correct IE every T2 S seconds. Young Midoriya, it's my duty as your teacher and mentor to correct any mistakes in their information. Ochako sat on her bed, guilt settling in her chest. Ochako had messed up with Deku Midoriya. She had let an insult fall out of her mouth and upset him, inciting a wave of aggravated people questioning him, causing him to throw up and embarrass himself. But she knew that already. She had come to his room to apologize and instead had made it worse. She had stood outside his door begging to be let in after being told no. Had her best friend asked All Might to come down to stop her? God, she was intolerable. Deku just wanted his space. Why didn't she see fit to give it to him? Did she really think she was so important that Deku's feelings about it didn't matter? Apologizing is fine, and best done immediately after you realize you are, but she shouldn't have tried to force one on him. She just keeps messing up, doesn't she? She really needs to sort out her own issues. Maybe call her parents, ask for some advice about what she had done. They've lived long enough to know what to do. She failed to support her friend, she failed to apologize to him, and then she failed to listen to him. She should have just left him alone. Maybe if she left him alone now he'd speak to her? No, he'd just think she didn't want to speak to him. Like when her throat was too sore to speak. He had assumed she was angry at him. Deku didn't deserve the anxiety that comes with losing a friend. Ochako would have to think of another way to apologize. Maybe write a note and leave it under his door. He asked her not to call him that. Midoriya would hopefully accept it and forgive her. If he didn't, maybe they could talk it out later. Ochako might not understand what had happened, but that didn't excuse what she had been doing, huh? She needed to call her parents, sort out what to do before she made it worse. Maybe try to figure out who's spreading the rumors? Get them to stop. She searched for her parents' contact. She couldn't mess up more, not when it came to her friend. Shota sat across the table from a very difficult young man. For the fourth time, Bakugo, we have solid evidence you did do what you were accused of. If you would admit to it, then we might be able to get you a plea. I told you already I didn't do anything wrong. As I have said, we know exactly what you've done. And to be honest, you're not making it any easier on us. I'm not helping any of you sheetfuckers. You all just want to believe that FING shitstain story, because you don't want me to be a hero. Shota rubbed at his forehead. Was he always this incompetent or was he being difficult on purpose? Bakugo, you and I both know that what you did was wrong, regardless of if you were stopped, and you knowingly doxed Midoriya to his assailant. You're lucky you're being set up for an average amount of charges. Bakugo scowled at him. Why don't we go through the basic questions, and then we can get back to your feeble excuses. First things first, how did you know about that man and Midoriya? Izuku sat on his bed, fretting over the lack of a lock on his door. The door was too easy to kick open, lock or not. Something ate away at his stomach, worming its way through his head, repeating the same sickening mantra. Someone is coming to get you. A bubbling anxiety pressed against his ribs. Why was he so afraid? His friends wouldn't just barge in, there were adults within yelling distance, and it's not like they hated him. Uraraka had come to apologize, even though he had refused her entry, she had been kind enough not to barge in. Izuku just wasn't ready to see her yet. He wasn't really ready to see anyone. That wasn't wrong of him, it wasn't like he had hurt them by telling them no. If he had, they would have told him so. They could always be waiting for when you sleep. Maybe he should put something in front of the door. You know, just to calm his anxieties. Maybe the dresser would work, or if that wasn't enough, his desk. Yeah, that should do it. Just a couple of pieces of furniture in front of the door to appease his fears. An angry blue-haired woman glared at the freckled boy lighting up her news app. All because of that, where she would have to explain to her children why their daddy went away. Rin was a great man, they just wanted different things and different people. Rin had made a great father and an even better teacher, but one little slot makes up tall tales about him raping him, and now Rin was locked away, unable to see his children. The quirkless really were the scum of the earth. This one wasn't even quirkless anymore. Probably got advice on it from his cow of a mother. She turned on her computer, flipping her hair back over her shoulder. Maybe she should find him on social media, let him know exactly whose life he had ruined. Shota was alarmed when he was told Midoriya had barricaded himself into his room. Sure, a build-up to an emotional response was to be expected, but he hadn't expected Midoriya to actively board himself in. No one was able to coax him out, not even his mentor. Shota needed to nip this behavior in the bud. Midoriya couldn't hide from his problems, it was self-destructive. Shota had known there was going to be some kind of breakdown on the boy's part, he should have taken the measures to prevent it. He walked to Midoriya's door. He wrapped his fingers around the doorknob, finding the door perfectly barricaded. Open the door, Midoriya. No, I'm alright. Shota sighed. That's all well and good, but I still need you to come out. Problem child muttered something on the other side of the door. What was that? Isase said and no. Shota rubbed his eyes. Problem child, I can stand out here all day. You might as well come out now. Shota sighed. Hopefully he wouldn't continue his hiding. Do don't want T2. Excuse me? Just don't TT think IIM are ready TT to CC come OU out. Well, that was more than obvious, he just couldn't have him barricaded away in his room. Midoriya, you can't stay barricaded in there, do you need me to remove you myself? Midoriya took his sweet time answering. Why you see can't open teach the DD door, huh? Shota's eyes twitched. It definitely wasn't the best time for sass from Midoriya. No, I can't, but you can, or I'll just go to your balcony. Receiving no response from his student, he stormed knocked on Tokoyami's door. He should be able to get to Midoriya's from there. Detective Tsukachi sat at his desk, as a group of emails flooded his screen. How would I go about adding on to the Higa case? Higa and Aldera seemingly being the main cause of the slew. I knew that BSTRD had to have done it to someone else. Shota stared at his problem child. He had somehow managed to prevent access to both doors, leaving Shota staring him down from the glass. That's not funny, problem child. Midoriya sat pressed against the corner, a small smile on his face. He had really put all his furniture against the front door, leaving him on the floor with only a pallet of blankets. How did you even do that? IITT told YYU CC can't open TT the DD doors. Shota frowned, before pulling on the door again. It had to be tied to something to prevent it from opening. He tried again and again, only getting it to an inch open. Problem child, let me into this room. And now WYWW would IIDD do T that? Because I am your teacher and part-time guardian, and I asked you to. B but IIDD don't WW want TTT to GGG go out there. Midoriya. Don't. Outside. You're just not allowed to be barricaded in. B but if IIDD T someone CC could J just CC come I in. Shota frowned. No one can just enter your dorm, that's why you have a lock dash. MILO lock CC can't KK keep it's a shut. Shota rubbed his head, Lock didn't work, so of course, the best solution is to blockade himself in. If he wanted everyone to leave him be, he could have put up a FING note. Midoriya, unblock your doors and lock it, and then I will make sure no one bothers you. His problem child walked to him and pulled the curtains shut. God FING it. Izuku wrapped himself into his fluffiest All Might blanket. People had stopped trying to come in about an hour ago. It was probably late, but Izuku couldn't seem to rest. Something fearful ate away at him, leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. Why was he afraid? He was perfectly safe in his room, no one could get in if he didn't want them to. All Might couldn't open the door, not anymore. Only Izuku gets to pick who comes in and out. So he didn't need to be scared. He was safe and sound, and no one that wanted to hurt him could. It wasn't like someone would kick down his barricades and come in to hurt him. Why would they? They were his friends, and it's not like they still believed the rumors. Right, they would ask him about it like Uraraka had. He could deal with it, even though the sight of it made him feel nauseated. That was probably unrelated though. There wasn't any way he was still scared of people being angry. It's just an emotion, and he had fought angry villains just fine. He wasn't scared of Kaken, and he was angry all the time. Sure, the sound of his explosions didn't make him feel good, but nobody likes loud noises. Not even Kaken, and it was his quirk. His painful quirk. Sure, he had some problems with sleeping and stuff, but the whole class had been through a lot. Nightmares were to be expected. Not nightmares of Kaken. Kaken's nightmares had to have been worse. He was kidnapped for like 60 whole hours. He was chained to a chair, at the mercy of the League. Izuku hadn't been in captivity more than a day, but he was racked with stupid nightmares. The kind that makes you want to fight sleep. Pathetic. Now Izuku had gotten the better student kicked out of the hero course, and possibly UA. Stop that. It wasn't Izuku's fault, his teachers were the ones who had started it. He had nearly begged to keep him in the hero course, and they had decided to put him in Gen Ed. He had made the mistake that got him arrested, even if Izuku didn't know what Kaken had done. It hadn't been his mistake. It was Kaken's plain and simple. Why couldn't he make the guilt go away? He hadn't done anything he was aware of, right? You shouldn't have been born. He was meant to be a hero, it was like fate. That's why All Might had given him his quirk, because he saw a spark in him. All Might shouldn't have given it to you. He should have given it to Mirio. It's too late to agree with Night Eye now. Izuku, he's dead. You should have tried harder to save him. There was nothing he could have done. He had promised to save Eri. He scratched at the thin scabs on his legs until they bled. That hurts. Kaken was right, wasn't he? Worthless, weak, defenseless Deku should take a swan dive. He might have been right in junior high, but not now. He had to help make sure Eri got to keep smiling, and that the torch of one for all got passed on. He had a purpose now, even if it didn't feel like it was much. It was still something, right? Yeah, it was something. Maybe he should write these down. Izuku denied many people entry the following day, hoping he hadn't hurt their feelings. They didn't need another reason to be angry with him. All Might had given him his phone back. Although he had to make Aizawa-sensei slip it through his balcony door. Why did they need him out there so bad? They only wanted him out there to answer all their questions about his dirty little secrets. Even his partners had asked for more details. Why couldn't his old school being investigated be enough? He had told Shoto and Tenya that he had been quirkless, and they still didn't understand. Didn't understand why he was so upset that Uraraka called him Deku instead of Dikairu. They had offered to address it with her, but they still didn't understand why that name hurt so much. They don't seem to understand anything he talks about. His partners don't understand why he was so afraid of text messages, or why that man kidnapped him. They did try, but it became more and more apparent they had no idea where he was coming from. It was almost like they had never met a quirkless person before. They probably had gone so far as to laugh at one before without a second thought. Maybe gone further too. But that's just part of his reality. His friends and classmates had been less understanding, acting like they didn't know how people were treated. He was asked to explain way too much. Whether it was because of his powerful quirk or positive outlook, they just didn't seem to understand what he tried to communicate. He shouldn't have answered that Skype call. It was stupid. He shouldn't have bothered anyone until he could put his emotional breakdown behind him. God, he regretted talking to anyone over the phone. It was all, "Why don't you come out?" or "Are you okay?" or "What's up with you?" Izuku didn't know the answer to that. If he did, he wouldn't be cowering in his room. Why did it feel like no one understood anything? He needed to get over this stupid fear of going outside, no matter how hard it felt to leave his little corner of the world. He needed to see his mom, and his friends needed him to go back to normal. Before they all really did hate him. Izuku looked down at his phone as a notification dwindled. Someone had DM'd him. The Chimera sat behind his desk, smiling as email after email drifted in, all of them forwarded by Tsukachi. Seems Rin Higa had done the same terrible deed before. Then a long-expected email came in. Seems like a certain judge had finally approved their ongoing request for a warrant. Now some well-deserved justice could be served. Izuku had blocked the user who had sent him paragraphs of hateful words. He had no idea who Rin was, and to be honest, he didn't have the energy to care. He had things to do, didn't he? Izuku opened his eyes, sleep still trying to drag him back in. His plan of intervaled naps seemed to be keeping away the repetitive nightmares. The floor was really starting to get uncomfortable, even with the palette of blankets. It was better than the smothering fear that tried to creep up his shoulders. He would have to leave eventually. He was running low on his food. Snacks wouldn't do for much longer, and it was increasingly hard to train in his room. Maybe he could ask Tokoyami to put food on his balcony? He didn't need to bother him. He needed to grow up and just leave. But what if it wasn't safe out there anymore? What if he threw up again? What if his teachers were mad at him? What if they still believed the rumors about him and All Might? What if they hurt him? What if he just confused them more? What if his partners passed around that he was quirkless? Oh no. What if everyone knew he used to be quirkless? The teachers knew, but they weren't allowed to say how worthless they thought he was. His friends were, and so were his partners. If he still had partners, he was going to lose everyone's good opinion of him, wasn't he? Something swam in his chest. Maybe it just wasn't time for him to go out there. He was perfectly safe there, wasn't he? No one got in, no one got out. Not unless Izuku wanted them to. He didn't want them. Maybe his mom. He missed her, but she was better off not speaking to him. He didn't want her to be disappointed in him for cowering in his room. Maybe he was fine to just ask someone to put food outside on his balcony. The noise of his door sliding made him look up. Was someone back already? The door went further than usual, and the bungee cord he had used to seal it fell onto the ground. Something swirled into his chest. "Hello. I'll reimburse you for the cord." His teacher's tired voice rang out as he struggled with the curtain. "And Mr. Daizawa? How dash. I found my knife. I don't dash. I know you don't, problem child, but I can't let you stay here any longer." Izuku scooted back against the wall. The nearly suffocating anxiety that burned in his chest assured him he couldn't go out there. Teacher or not. I am not leaving, I can't dash. It had taken Shota what had felt like forever to drag Midoriya out of his room. But he wasn't going to leave him in there. He needed staff supervision, and to be honest, Shota was concerned about his student. It was made painfully clear that his problem child didn't trust him, or a majority of the staff. That was to be expected. Although Shota had hoped that he would trust them more than he did, it was logical to think he would have trouble. He should have brought Namuri, not to knock him out per se, but to help assure him that Shota didn't have an intent behind his motives. The kid's seen enough of that. Shota had to come up with a new plan when Midoriya had refused to move past the balcony door. It involved physically carrying the green net out onto the balcony. Midoriya, of course, made sure to go completely limp. How was such a small boy so heavy? So he gave up. He would just bring Recovery Girl to check up on him later. She had threatened All Might if she didn't get to see Midoriya and his stitches. Midoriya curled back up into that same corner of his room. Shota tried to ignore the dirty look Midoriya shot him. "IITT told you I'm not leaving." "That's fine. But you can't stay completely unsupervised." Midoriya shifted uncomfortably. Really? IICC can JJuJ just SSST stay in HE here? If you want to." He needed to speak to Hound Dog about coaxing Midoriya to come out. "We have a few things to talk about though." It couldn't be good for him to sit in here by himself all day. L like WW? Not this hiding away behavior. Like the arrest status, court, the kind of thing. Midoriya nodded, although he seemed more anxious than before. Oh. He shifted uncomfortably. CC, can I ask us something? Sure. I is Kaken is still ing. B because I don't w want him CC coming BB back and I don't WW want TT do you upset him dash. Shota tried to keep the distaste for Bakugo off of his face. Bakugo no longer attends UA. Midoriya looked like he'd reached out and hit him. What? WWI? HH had GG good G grades, and he had an AAA awesome QQ quirk dash. Midoriya, Bakugo has been arrested. Shota thought the better of telling him why. BBB because of me? I dash. No Midoriya, not because of you. Midoriya slumped against the wall, seeming content to end the conversation. What do you do all day? IITTRD train, or study. Shota blinked. And? Is sometimes IITT talk TT to MIM. That definitely didn't sound like healthy STMLTN. Tartarus sounded more stimulative than that. Shota wasn't saying that Midoriya's mother wasn't a person he should talk to. Talking to other people was good. Willingly staying in a room almost void of stimulants was bad. They weren't trying to further his chance of mental illness. That's it. Why yeah it's FF fine. Shouldn't Midoriya want to be around other things and people? He definitely needed to speak with Hound Dog. Sometimes IIDD do an analysis. At least he was pursuing an interest of his. Why you WW want TT to SSCII it? Sure. Tsu was worried about Midoriya. Then again, so were most of their class. He hadn't shown up outside of his room since the day of the rumors. She wished she knew who started them. People shouldn't just listen to any rumor they hear, especially when it's out of character. Aizawa-sensei had told them the rumors were undeniably false, even though some kids were hesitant to listen. He had mentioned an investigation into Midoriya's school, and that Bakugo was removed for his correlation to it, which was what sparked the class's newest discussion. Tokoyami had affirmed that Mr. Aizawa uses his balcony to get to Midoriya's. That had sparked more interest. Why hadn't Mr. Aizawa just made Midoriya come out? He could, couldn't he? Tsu scrolled on her news feed, looking at the newest articles, hoping to see a glance into what was happening with her friend. There was a story about a middle school teacher's past abuse victims coming forward, each and every one of them named. Hadn't anyone ever heard of privacy? Denki was showing his phone to Kirishima. Bakugo was arrested? No way. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago. Oh, send me the link. Tsu opened the link in the group chat. The title of the story made her frown. UA student arrested, charged with aiding the kidnapping of his peer. Midoriya's kidnapping? Bakugo had helped with that? Why would he want to do that? Sure, he was rough on Midoriya, but it was a rivalry, wasn't it? Todoroki hurried out of the living room, Ida not far behind him. Tsu started to look into similar articles. She was not liking the picture she was piecing together. She, and notably a lot of the class, looked almost ready to murder. What school did Midobro go to? Aldea or something? Aldera, ribbit. Tsu, did you see this one? Ochako turned her borrowed tablet towards her, showing an upsetting headline. Ex-wife of Higa Rin denies truth in XL abuse allegations, saying, he would never sleep with a quirkless, much less a male child. The shady website had gone so far as to post a picture of the poor victim. With their familiar green eyes, freckles, and frightened smile, and their messy green curls. Her stomach churned. Was that Midoriya? Shota stared at his phone. Hound Dog asked him another answerless question. How was he supposed to know the answer to any of those questions? He was barely in there for an hour or two, and Midoriya hadn't seemed very happy to answer any questions. He had apparently spent all night on an analysis on the newest underground hero. It was some solid analysis considering the clip was less than a minute long. Yet another example of problem child's talent. Shota might have been right about how he locked himself away, but he had been wrong about why. He had assumed Midoriya was trying to distance himself, mostly for a break. But instead it was shaping up to look more and more like a genuine fear of being around other people, or at least the ones not in his room. He had reached out to Recovery Girl for a manageable amount of advice, and all she had said was to feed him. Shota knew he needed food. It wasn't like snacks would suffice him forever. He should have figured out what Midoriya had wanted before going out, but all Problem Child would say was whatever you get will be fine. What if Shota brought him something he was allergic to? What if he brought him a person? Not that he would do that, but it was still the principle of the thing. Popping suddenly into view was an upset Todoroki nearly speed walking towards him, Ida not far behind. Maybe they could be bought into making Midoriya food? Or at least knowing what he liked. Where are you two going? Tenya had been worried about his partner, even more so after a particularly confusing talk with him. He didn't understand most of the things Izuku had spoken about. But reading those articles really clicked a few pieces into place. The puzzle was not making a picture Tenya liked. So when Shoto stormed out of the living room, Tenya wasn't far behind. Even though Tenya had no idea what they were off to do. Tenya tried his best to keep up with Shoto, which was surprisingly difficult. For such a slow runner, he was quite the quick walker. Shoto! He hissed. They needed a plan. Regardless of how upset those articles' claims and premises had made them, they still needed a plan to support Izuku. If it was hard for his partners to hear about, it had to be worse to be going through it. Tenya barely caught the elevator. We need a plan dash. No. We need to speak with Izuku. Shoto wrapped his arms around himself. Shoto, we shouldn't risk adding more emotional stress to Izuku's life. He went through quite the ordeal and now dash. Now he's not doing well. I get that, but I'm not going to leave him alone in there. A pure look of determination flashed across the duo-haired teen's face. I was not meaning to say we should leave him alone. I was merely suggesting we come up with a plan to comfort him. Shoto made a noise of affirmation as his phone buzzed. He didn't pick it. Izuku trusts us, doesn't he? Tenya frowned. I would like to think he does, although I can't say for certain. It didn't feel like he did. In fact, Tenya wasn't sure if Izuku trusted him at all. Izuku had taken the time to explain he had been quirkless and that had resulted in teasing, although the events that were described by Izuku had crossed the line quite easily into bullying. The elevator opened, leaving Tenya to follow Shoto out to their partner's room. Aizawa-sensei leaned onto Izuku's door, looking down at something on his phone. He glanced up at them before he reached him. Where are you two going? Izuku stared down at his open notebook. His unkempt script scrawled across the page, a rough sketch of the underground hero pressed to one page. He tried to fight the urge to correct the page or rewrite it. Aizawa-sensei had said he liked it. It wasn't like he would lie to him. Not about the thing they were learning about. It was a logical ruse. Aizawa-sensei had stopped doing those a while ago. Unless he just wasn't announcing it anymore, but that would mean that it was more of a lie than a ruse. Wouldn't it? Mr. Aizawa had shared some information with him. They had managed to set a court date for him. Aizawa-sensei had said he had to be there. For his trial, and for the inevitable others. He couldn't help but feel sick. He would not only be forced to leave the safety of his room. He would have to talk about what happened. His mom was going to be there, so was All Might. Not to mention the strangers. What if his friends were there? What if they didn't find him guilty? Negative thoughts swarmed between Izuku's ears, his head pounded with the increased beatings of his heart. His groggy teacher's voice smoked through the door, leaving Izuku with bland parts of words. Aizawa-sensei was only supposed to get him lunch. Why was he outside talking? Who else was out there? Maybe he wasn't coming back in, and Izuku could block off the back door. He couldn't be in trouble if Aizawa-sensei never found out about it. Maybe he had lied to him. Maybe he was talking to people who would take him away. He had typed at his phone a lot. He had mentioned Hound Dog too, but Izuku didn't need Hound Dog. He was safest in his room at the moment, and that didn't mean anything was wrong. Did it? He had been awfully worried, especially about things that were small. But the devil's in the details. Everything needed to be thought out, didn't it? If he didn't think it out, then he would make it worse. If he didn't think out the small things, then no one else would. That's what made him such a good analyst. The sliding door swooshed open, revealing a pair of not Aizawas. Shoto and Tenya, who both seemed almost as anxious as him. Tenya seemingly fixated on the pile of furniture across the room from him. Shoto sat down about a foot away from Izuku, hopefully not noticing the fearful flinching. It was not a good day for Izuku. "We need to speak with you," Shoto said, seemingly unaware of the anxiety he had just planted in Izuku's mind. This wasn't fun. Izuku scooted until his back hit the wall. Still too close to them. Why was he so uncomfortable? It probably had something to do with the growing panic behind his ribs. Tenya still tossed worried looks between Izuku and his barricade, and Shoto hadn't looked away from Izuku since he entered. No one had said much. Maybe some half-hearted pleasantries, but the air in the room felt too tense for Izuku to speak much. "How've you been, Izuku?" Izuku frowned. Wasn't it obvious? He was fine, a little anxious but fine. "I been okay. Just a little stressed out. Not like it would kill him to do some worrying." "That's good." Tenya gave an occasional glance back at the stacked furniture. "So can I ask, why did you block the entryway?" "IIJJ just TT thought IIWW would make MEFF feel be better." Tenya shot another glance back to the pile before giving Shoto a look. But he didn't say anything, he just sat on the other side of Izuku. Shouldn't he be scolding him already? About moving around his furniture, or staying in his room? For hiding away like some baby, or refusing entry? Not eating properly or missing classes? Did Tenya think he wasn't okay? Did he think he would fall apart if he simply scolded him? "You said your school was being investigated, right?" Izuku blinked at Shoto. "What?" "Why, yeah." Izuku scrunched his face into a wobbly smile. "WI. For discrimination, right? Because online dash." Tenya elbowed Shoto. "Online what? What was going on online? What were they talking about?" "Online there's this news website claiming that one of your old teachers have been arrested for a certain kind of abuse, and we didn't know if you wanted to talk about it or dash. So that's why they came. They just wanted to know if it was true. If he was like that. Or tell him how disgusting he was. If it was just an article though, it shouldn't have his picture on it. Right? Just a picture of Higa, and a short tirade about the man. That means they didn't inherently know he was one of the ones that he was with. Maybe they didn't need to know. What they didn't know couldn't hurt them." "Izuku? You've been staring off for like a minute dash." "Why yeah, IIWW was TTT thinking. That SSS sounds TTT terrible. We just wanted to know if you knew about it, because your picture's on the article." Izuku's heart nearly stopped. What? Mitsuki stared at the empty coffee table in front of her. She almost missed Katsuki. Almost. She still couldn't believe Inko hadn't wanted to originally press charges against her brat. That woman was all too tolerant. If only Izuku hadn't inherited it, then maybe he would have beaten her brat back. Too late for regret now, it was done. She really should have figured out what her brat was doing. Maybe then that little sheet wouldn't have gotten too far at hurting Izuku. It's not her fault they were busy people. Or that Katsuki stepped way over the line. It was hard to imagine him as a hero before with that FANG attitude, and now it was harder. At least he can't be a hero now. He's too much of a villain. If only someone had told her when it started. Even she had acknowledged the undeserved praise her brat got. Yet she didn't think about what it would do to him. FANG narcissistic is what he is. She effed up, didn't she? As a mother, or even an aunt. Masaru sure thought so. He was sure it was mostly their fault. He should have been a stronger role model, and she shouldn't have been so goddamn lenient on the manners. Wasn't mostly their faults. Not in Mitsuki's eyes, 40% their fault at most. 20 his environment, and the rest was all him. Sometimes they're born effed. No one's fault when that happens. Masaru wanted Katsuki to come back, hoping he could change or some shit. Mitsuki didn't exactly agree, he wouldn't change. She doubted he wanted to, or even really thought he needed to. Even if he did, it would take a while, and that would be long after he's in jail. How were Izuku and his mother such nice, forgiving people? If someone had hit her kid once, she would have killed them. Then again, it always took Inko the longest to get angry. At least they could agree on one thing. Hurting the adults was fine. Izuku was some kind of shut-in now. Katsuki had really effed him, huh? Now neither of them might be a hero, especially with the slur of FING disorders Izuku's bound to get. Maybe she should call her, talk about Izuku, maybe buy some drinks? Or invite her over for some vodka. Yeah, vodka sounded good. Maybe she should go ahead and get herself a drink before the call with Inko. It wouldn't hurt anyone, right? She deserved to have a couple of stiff drinks with her closest friend and husband. Inko deserved a break, and Masaru deserved a big fucking chill pill. Maybe sober him out some. Drinks sounded good. First the rumors and now this. Class 1A had its fair share of drama. Ijiro doesn't exactly know how to feel about the flood of new information drifting around the class. Bakugo, his friend, had been arrested. But he didn't deserve to be Ijiro's friend. Ijiro was bullied and he made friends with one. How did he miss that? Sure, Bakugo had been motivated and passionate, not to mention confident, all very manly things. But the other things he did canceled them out. The threats, the hitting, and the frequent verbal abuse. Totally not manly, in fact it was kind of villainous. How did none of them realize what a bad person he was? You know, we just met you, so it's kind of telling that we know your personality is flaming crap mixed with garbage. Maybe it was just Ijiro who had been blind to it. Midobro must hate him. He had to watch as someone who should have been able to see the bullying, purposefully tried to bring him around his bully. But Ijiro just wanted to be both of their friends, he didn't mean to bring them together like that. The more he thinks about it, Bakugo wasn't a nice person. He must have focused on the positive aspects a little too hard. He still felt guilty, it wasn't his fault that he looked for the best in his friends. He wanted them to be the best they could be. Even if the best they were was violent and rude. Nope. It wasn't Kirishima's fault Bakugo did what he did. It was Bakugo's. What was in the past was in the past. Bakugo probably apologized already, and Midoriya's situation was more important. Someone should tell Mr. Aizawa about the picture on that sketchy site. Maybe that could be him, telling the principal all about it. It would be the manly thing to do. Midoriya would probably be glad he was such a bro, and told someone about the website. It was almost misleading after all. Not to mention the creepy people commenting on it. Yeah, that's what he would do. He started out of the dorms, hearing a conversation with Minoma and another kid. That's right, the blonde one Bakubro? He was arrested for some kind of assault, and that green-headed one he's nothing but a petty slot hell no. And 1A still think themselves superior Hey Minoma. Spreading rumors isn't very manly, especially when they aren't all that right. Maybe you should listen to your teacher, and keep your head out of it. The look of pure hatred Minoma sent him was worth it as the other kid walked away. Oh well, he needed to speak with Aizawa-sensei. Mina would love to hear all about his little adventure later. He bet on it. Ashido had been stalking an almost elusive blonde since Kirishima had recalled what he had said to the class. If it wasn't so early everyone would be on it, but as it seems only Ashido gets up early for but beating. She wishes she could get her hands on Bakugo, especially after reading the most recent article. Who the f does that? Not to mention the rumors he force-fed the school and her. She had almost believed them. She could have been the one spreading them. Hopefully someone would have done what she was going to do to Minoma to her. She would have deserved it. There he was. Surely her teachers wouldn't care too much, especially not if he knew better than to tell. That wouldn't be too hard to ensure. Fighting Minoma was interesting. It was a rush she hadn't had in quite a while, not since the sports festival, and he actually deserved it. He had it coming, spreading rumors about people being wrong. Even if some of them seemed plausible, like that All Might thing. It wasn't true, it was a lie built up to hurt people. Even if All Might and Midoriya were close, it wasn't weird. Maybe Todoroki was right, and All Might was Midoriya's dad. That would explain their quirks. Ashido should be careful now. Minoma could tell a teacher, and she'd get grounded, or worse. Mrs. Midnight was near the dorms. Why was she there? Ashido wrapped her hands under her arms. No need to get herself into unnecessary trouble. Miss Mina? What's wrong with your hands? Mrs. Midnight placed a soft hand on her shoulder. Nothing. Just a little cold. Way to play it off, Ashido. I sound like I just committed murder. Not to mention the cold thing. It's summer. You have pockets. You've played yourself. Cold, huh? Midnight did not seem to believe her either. "Let me see." She pulled her arms out to begrudgingly show the teacher, watching her face as she looked over her bruised and somewhat bloody knuckles. "I can explain." The Ravenette let out a sigh before dropping her hands. She pushed her forward towards the inside of the building. "They better have deserved it." Ashido blinked. "Of course. Don't let Aizawa catch you, he won't let you go so easy." With that, Mrs. Midnight left, leaving a confused Ashido to hurry back inside. Definitely my new favorite teacher. His partners may have convinced him to unblock himself, but that didn't mean he had to come out. Aizawa-sensei told him Hound Dog said so. He didn't have to leave, as long as he felt all right he was fine. It was so he could have visitors, like Recovery Girl and All Might and his friends. To be honest, he didn't really want visitors, but he wasn't allowed to refuse most of them. He got to spend most of his time with Aizawa-sensei and All Might. It was usually who was the least busy that got to spend time with him. They said they wanted to spend time with him, but he wasn't stupid. He knew they'd rather be doing something else. Maybe having personal time, or something else. So would he. He would love to be in class. He just couldn't seem to build up the courage to leave. It was starting to feel like it was only safe in his room. That couldn't be right though. Everyone else was perfectly okay to come and go, but he can't even convince himself to sit in the hallway. His mom must be so disappointed. He can't even find the courage to get his own food. At least they feed him. He was feeling kind of weak before, but the meals they bring him help. At least he can't bother his mom from here. Aizawa-sensei had said something about Nedzu yesterday, but he doesn't remember what they were talking about. He had done more analysis, maybe that's what he was talking about. Recovery Girl was supposedly wanting to see him, although he didn't see why. She had fixed his stitches, and she said she didn't want to see him again. Although that could have just been alluding to not wanting to see him hurt. He wasn't hurt. So why did she want to see him? Why did Hound Dog want to see him? He was the school guidance counselor, not a usual teacher. What did he need Izuku for? Izuku had at first thought he would want to force him out of his room. But instead he was told to stay where he felt safe for now? Were they planning to drag him out when he least expected it? Maybe he should block the door again. He didn't want to use his quirk on his teachers. But that didn't mean he wouldn't. He couldn't leave yet. Every time he thinks about it he gets so scared. Were they really planning on dragging him out? It did sound like the most rational idea. It wouldn't hurt anyone if he put just a dresser in front of the door this time. Soft knocking came from his door. Who could that be?